All right, let's go. Drive time. Wednesday afternoon, 7 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. We got a beautiful fall day outside. It's about 60 degrees, clear and sunny here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, right outside of our Broadway media studios. Lovely Wednesday afternoon. And as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. That is Porter Larson behind the glass today. Happy Wednesday to you. Halfway through that work week and one day closer to the weekend. College game day is in town. At least that's what it appears up on campus. They have kind of sanctioned off up there on Guardsman's Way, right, kind of on University Avenue. It looks like they're already starting their setup, even though it is Wednesday. So college game day already here. And, of course, excited for the weekend. It looks like it is official that Cincinnati's leading rusher will be missing this football game. We heard the potential of that yesterday during the show, and it looks like it is more or less official. Pete Thamel is reporting that Evan Pryor will sit out against the University of Utah with an ankle injury. As the Big 12 availability reports have been released, kind of. Brett McMurphy with a piece today, kind of taking Utah to task and Coach Witt to task with the way they've handled this availability report, which we've talked about on the show. It is clearly an unserious exercise for Coach Witt and his staff, and that's not a surprise if you've kind of followed the way they've handled injuries throughout the course of Kyle's tenure as the head coach in the University of Utah. So we still do not know who's going to be starting at quarterback. That has not been announced just yet, but one eye ahead to Saturday for not just the Utes, but a big weekend in the Big 12 as we continue to try to figure out exactly what this conference is going to look like when the dust settles. Wild to think there's only 4 games left, I should say, for Utah and for BYU. The Big 12 slate this week will continue to provide a little bit of separation. We'll go over some of these games. Big one in Ames between Arizona State and Iowa State. A lot of these teams just holding on. Houston may have the clearest path forward. They welcome in West Virginia, which should be an easy one. But Utah, Cincinnati, of course, top of mind awareness. BYU on a bye. They're hoping to get L.J. Martin back and healthy before they have to go down and take on Texas Tech at their place. So the landscape of the Big 12 continues to be kind of the main topic here on the show, throughout the show today. We got some good college football guests to get you ready for the college football weekend ahead. An unexpected busy day of news here locally. Good day to be Logan Cooley. The Utah Mammoth have signed Logan Cooley, friend of the show, by the way, to an 8-year, $80 million extension. Logan's really good. He's very young. He's only 21. He leads the Mammoth in goals and is tied for second in points. In 11 games, he has 8 goals. And the Mammoth did lose to the Edmonton Oilers last night, but a 7-game winning streak prior to that. So Logan Cooley will be here for the long term. You know, when it was announced that at the time, the Utah Hockey Club, now the Utah Mammoth, were coming to our market, we did a bunch of shows debating which team's going to win a championship first, the Mammoth or the Jazz. Of course, the Jazz have been here 4 decades and have never won a championship, and the Mammoth have been here a year plus and are clearly miles ahead of the Utah Jazz. And look, we could get into the conversation about, is it easier to build a hockey team in Salt Lake or a basketball team in Salt Lake? Well, I think the answer is clearly a hockey team. And this is a key piece that ultimately has been locked up now for the next 8 years. So Logan Cooley, 8-year, $80 million extension for the Utah Mammoth, who saw their 7-game winning streak come to a close. But it's a good team. It's a fun team. I'll be back in action on Sunday against Tampa Bay here at the Delta Center. The Delta Center will host Portland and the Utah Jazz tonight. The Portland Trail Blazers have a head coach that just made bail. He was arrested on federal gambling charges. So the Blazers and the Jazz tonight. The Jazz have won their first 2 home games. They're 2-1 on the season, and as we've discussed, they're fun. It's a lot. This is the most fun Jazz team we've had since Donovan and Rudy and that whole crew is dismantled. So we'll see what comes our way tonight with the Jazz and the Blazers, and then we'll see if the Mammoth can get back to their winning ways after a little bit of a break. Tampa Bay in town on Sunday at the Delta Center. Some RSL news today that we're going to unpack on the show. Jason Kreis has been named as the president of soccer operations. It is a new position. He will oversee the soccer operations side of both the Utah Royals and obviously Real Salt Lake. So both the men's and the women's soccer operations group now report to Jason. So happy for him. Landed on the ground a couple of years ago after a couple of tough coaching stops in New York and Orlando and Miami. And his long and winding road journey ends back where really it started after he was done playing, and he is now running the show. He will report directly to Steve Starks, who's the CEO of the Miller Companies. And Pablo Mastroeni and his staff, Kurt Schmidt, Tony Beltran, everybody now reports to Jason. So some local news, kind of unexpected today on the program. We'll talk about that, unpack some of it. Your pro football weekend ahead will get started on Thursday. So tomorrow night it's the Ravens and the Dolphins. Reports are Lamar Jackson is trying to get back to play for Baltimore. They have a very slim margin of error after starting the year 1-5. They're 2-5 after Tyler Huntley helped them to a win over the weekend. We do have a really fun game. This is got to be considered a rivalry at Orchard Park between the Bills and the Chiefs. A weird dynamic. The Bills have won the last 4 regular season games, while the Chiefs have won the last 4 playoff games, which is pretty interesting. Cardinals-Cowboys will end your weekend with some Monday Night Football. Your Sunday Night Football is the Seahawks and the Commanders, where Jaden Daniels looks like he's going to give it a go. So a lot to do on the show today. Good guest list on the show today. Start things off with our old buddy Andy Phillips. I think Andy might have some thoughts on field goals, whether or not they're important, and the current state of the Utah Utes, who, by the way, continue to receive a lot of praise and accolades from folks that do their own power rankings. I think Tom Fornelli caught a lot of people's attention. He has Utes as the number 11 team in the country. As I continue to point out, you can agree or disagree, but the advanced metrics on most websites still believe Utah is close to a top 10 team, if not higher than that. And I know BYU fans are upset about stuff like that. I mean, look, bottom line is BYU got the head-to-head. BYU is undefeated. They're the front runner in the Big 12. They're the Vegas favorite right now to win the Big 12. So a week off for the Y, and then they're back at it against Texas Tech. But a big one for Utah coming up on Saturday against Cincinnati, who, again, will be without their leading running back, Evan Pryor. He will sit. So they're hoping they get him back the week after next against Arizona. We'll start things off today after Andy joins us. Then we'll kind of move over into a space where we'll discuss the RSL news. Jason Kreis live in studio. Alongside our little buddy Trey. Trey's going to be along for the ride in the 3 o'clock hour. We'll get Jason's thoughts on this promotion, what it means for the club, and what's next. They have a lot of decisions to make. Sounds like Pablo is going to be around for a couple more years. I think he is under contract. But they've got a lot of decisions to make on players. RSL last year, according to a couple of different metrics, 25th in spend in Major League Soccer. And last year was a record $336 million transfer fee spend across the landscape of the league, which shattered the record. And if RSL wants to be one of the elite teams in Major League Soccer, the Millers are going to have to write checks, and there's no other way about that. So we're going to ask Jason about what we can expect coming up this offseason. We're going to bring in Kenneth Scott today, former wide receiver for the University of Utah. Talk wide receiver, kind of the position, what he's seen, and why we haven't really had an elite one in quite some time, and his thoughts on the current state of the Utes. Then we'll break down Utah-Cincinnati with our friend Sammy Mora from UteZone. So Andy Phillips, Jason Kreis, Trey Fitzgerald, Kenneth Scott, Sammy Mora, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners on this Wednesday, and that guy, Porter Larson. So we've discussed as recently as yesterday whether or not the Big 12 was going to come down on Witt and the staff for their unserious approach to the availability report. And Brett McMurphy drops a piece today, and he didn't say that there's any sort of punishment incoming, but he did quote some people that seem to be pretty frustrated with the way Kyle's going about this. And as I referenced in the open, this is no surprise.
No.
I mean, when I heard that they were going to be mandated, like we talked about it the day the release came out, because Kyle for years said, well, if they tell me I have to do it, I'll do it. And as soon as the release came out, we're like, I can't wait to see how Kyle circumvents this process. And he clearly has, if we're being honest.
Well, and it's interesting because while that is an argument you can very much make, that I don't know that circumvent is the right word, because Kyle is using the letter of the Big 12 law to I guess, be cute about it, right? Like I'm not going to say that he is just being very straightforward and transparent. That's just carrying water for the guys up on the hill. But I'm also not just going to carry water for the people who just want to know everything so they can get their article written with their sportsbook sponsor, Brett McMurphy, right? Like that is something that is also part of this. People who are not on the ground, who don't know what's going on, but want to know what's going on the ground, right? Last week, for instance, it was known through Salt Lake that the quarterback situation was questionable. It was, what we were going to see Saturday. It was up in the air, and when that happens, it kind of reflects what we saw in the Big 12 availability report all week long. If you want people to be a little more detailed about what they put out there, put it in the letter of the law and see then if there's something you can enforce. But right now, man, there's so much availability for vagary in the availability report that's allowing this to kind of be a gray area and allowing coaches both to take advantage of it and the opposite, right? Just kind of play along.
Yeah, until Witt gets in trouble from the conference, and I have to wonder if that's going to be the deal, then we're not going to expect anything different. But yes, I do believe he is circumventing, and I think it's very obvious, and I'm not going to do the state media homer thing where it's like, no, he's actually following the letter of the law. It's an unserious exercise for Kyle. I knew it would be, and certainly there are moments where I get a chuckle out of it when it comes to like Lander Barton out for the first half because he's been suspended. Do you have any up-to-date information on the quarterback? He talked about it a little bit last night on the coach's show. Any information on who's going to be under center on Saturday?
No, I think that as we should and would expect, if there is any gray area, Kyle, especially at the quarterback position, is going to wait until game time. That's just, again, like I know people don't want to hear it, and maybe you don't think that it's right or that we have like the Big 12 should come down on the clarity there, but we won't know until kickoff for sure. What I can say is that Devin Dampier, the stuff that he was campaigning to play and physically probably could have played last week is true. That all was real. It wasn't smoke. That was true. So I think that's probably the same case going in. I think that if he's ready to go, Devin Dampier starts. Again, no controversy or anything like that on the Hill.
All right, so we will talk about this throughout the course of the day. Some interesting stuff. I'll maintain my stance that until the Big 12 comes down on Witt, it's going to continue to be an unserious exercise. So it depends on probably who you cheer for as far as what side of the equation you fall on. Andy Phillips, first guest right out of the gates on a Wednesday. But before we get to Andy, courtesy of our good friends at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip. Prize Picks, best place to win cash on football, whether it is the Broncos or the Niners, Raiders, whoever your favorite team is. Well, basketball is here. It's also the best place to win cash on the Jazz or the Knicks or the Lakers or the Warriors, depending on who your favorite squad is. Prize Picks now offer stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. If you want to pick more on Steph Curry's points, 3-pointers, or assists, now you can pick all of them in the same lineup only on Prize Picks. You can follow other Prize Picks players directly on the app, copy their lineups in one click. Whether it's a friend, a celebrity partner, or just someone whose picks you like, you can hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on Prize Picks. It is good to be right. Utah, Cincinnati, Saturday night, 8:15, another late kick. I know a lot of people not thrilled about that, but beholden to the TV partners and whatever TV time slot you are assigned to, that's the reality of this deal. Our pregame coverage with Porter Larson and Trevor Riley begins at 4:15 on Saturday. We'll have probably 10, 11 hours of game day coverage for you, so keep that in mind. And make sure to tune in right at 4:15 and keep the radio dial where it needs to be to listen to Bill Riley and Stevenson Sylvester and Scott Mitchell take you through the call as Utah-Cincinnati with big-time conference implications on Saturday night with College game day in town. Now, the line has moved since you and I spoke. It opened up Utah minus 5.5. It slowly creeped up a couple of different times, and as we sit here today to start the show, Utah is now officially a 10.5-point favorite over Cincinnati. My advice to you is don't bet on sports, but I'll double down on this and say I wouldn't touch that line. Now, of course, the news that we alluded to as a potential yesterday when it was leaked that Scott Satterfield expected Evan Pryor to be out became official today as Pete Thamel is reporting that Evan Pryor will sit when it comes to Utah-Cincinnati coming up on Saturday night. Now, Pryor suffered an ankle injury against Baylor. This kid is good. He's an Ohio State transfer. He averages over 7 yards per carry, and he's rushed for 478 yards on the season. Now, they've got the Tawee Walker kid, who's a Wisconsin transfer, who's also had a good year. They've got some depth at that position. I don't know that this moves the needle all that much, but technically Pryor is Cincinnati's leading rusher. But offensively, Cincinnati has been really good all year. I don't think that's the issue that they need to worry about. Their defensive line has the lowest Pro Football Focus grade of any defensive line in the Big 12. So what are we expecting? Well, we're expecting Utah to run the football down their throats the way Utah ran the football down Colorado's throats. As we just discussed and Porter alluded to, no word on who will be under center, and we will not learn until the first snap is taken. Because even last week, Devin was dressed. He was ready to roll, looked like he was warming up. And, of course, the first snap was taken by Bird Ficklin, who had an unbelievable game against Colorado. I don't know that it's look, I haven't approached this through the quarterback controversy lens. I think the job is still Devin's if he's healthy. There are a lot of complications come into play as far as NIL, what you're paying him, transfer, all that stuff, what sort of promises were made to him. Bird, of course, is a true freshman. I thought the comments made by Scott Mitchell on the program earlier this week when I just simply asked him if it was up to you, who would start as it pertains to the quarterback position. And ultimately, Scott said if it was up to him, he would start Bird. So if you start Bird Ficklin, and if it's his job the rest of the way, you better be prepared to lose Devin Dampier via transfer. At least that would be my guess. So if Devin's healthy, I think the job is still his. Of course, we've seen now that Bird can get the job done. So if it's not Devin and it is Bird, I'm still very confident that Utah's rushing attack will be able to really handle Cincinnati's defensive line, because if there's one matchup you want on your side, if you're a Utah fan, it's this offensive line taking advantage of a weaker opposition on the other side of the football, because every time that's been the case, Utah has been unstoppable. And, of course, the two biggest challenges Utah's faced in Texas Tech and BYU have gone the wrong way. But every time there's been even a little bit of a mismatch where Utah's offensive line is able to just dominate the opposition, the holes and the lanes are wide open, and Wayshawn, Nakari, Bird, Devin, whoever it is, they'll have opportunities, I think, to run the football all night long on Cincinnati. But I wouldn't touch that line now that it's 10.5. I can understand why when it opened at 5.5, a lot of fans jumped on Utah. But a 5-point swing over the course of it's Wednesday, so 3.5 days now. That's a massive swing. And, of course, the injury news today about Cincinnati's leading rusher, Evan Pryor, probably moved the needle. But, again, Tawee Walker, Wisconsin transfer, good player. Brendan Sorsby has had 5 games where he's passed for 2 touchdowns and rushed for 2 touchdowns. So he's a dual threat kid as well. But should be a fun one. Should be a fun late-night game. And we know what that electricity and atmosphere feels like in Salt Lake City when it is a night game at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Again, 8:15 kickoff. Our pregame coverage will begin at 4:15. Brigham Young is on a bye. They're looking to get LJ Martin up and right before the Texas Tech game. LJ had to leave the game last week in Ames. BYU was still able to get it done because that's kind of the deal with them this year. And last year, quite frankly, they just find ways to win. Lastly, as we've discussed on the show, Coach Witt and his staff do not take the availability report seriously. They have found a way to circumvent it and get around it and not take it seriously at all. And, your opinion on this is going to be who you cheer for. Your opinion on this is going to be who you support. Bottom line. I've seen the tweets where it's like, no, he actually takes it seriously. Okay, let's stop. Let's call it what it is. And part of it is funny. The Lander Barton out for the first half last week on the availability report is funny. I just wondered if at some point the conference was going to sit up and do something about it or take it seriously or come down with a fine. We haven't heard anything from the conference, but as we referenced, Brett McMurphy writing a piece today, and I'll just read this one quote, and then we'll catch a break to bring in Andy Phillips. Quote, Whittingham has done it multiple times this year. If you're actually taking the sanctity of these, well, that's a little silly. Let's not clutch our pearls about these things. Quote, Whittingham has done it multiple times this year. If you're actually taking the sanctity of these availability reports that you as a conference have installed, you should take this more seriously. There should be some sort of repercussion. He's outright lying and manipulating reports. That's ridiculous, end quote. It's one thing for Brett McMurphy to write about it. It's another thing for Brett Yormark to have an issue with it. And until the conference decides to do something about it, I would imagine we're going to see the same thing week after week after week. All right. A lot of conversation about Utah's kicking game and the lack of going for field goals against BYU. One of the best Ute kickers to ever do it. Andy Phillips will join us coming up on the other side of a quick break on a Wednesday drive. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. We take care of kickers on this radio show. Field goals are important too. Live in studio, one of the best to ever do it for the Utes. You know him, you love him. Andy Phillips. I didn't know you were joining us live in studio. I'm thrilled to see you, man. How you been?
Yeah, Porter and I thought we'd kind of throw that on you last second. I'm doing well. I work just down the road, so this was an easy trip. I prefer it over a phone call, I think.
Love it. No, I in studio is always better than over the phone, and it's great to see you. You look like you're keeping yourself in great shape. Give our Ute fan listeners an update on the Andy Phillips experience. What's going on with you these days?
Oh, man, I coach all my kids, so football, soccer, ski racing. Won't tell you which one I love the most. I think you can probably guess, though. And I work in real estate with a good friend of mine and my father-in-law, and life's good, man. Life's good. My youngest my twins are 7, and Gus is 9, Max is 11. So I'm in a great stage of life where my kids can just handle themselves a little bit more. No one's in diapers, and we're rolling.
I've got to tell you this because I give all my friends the same advice, and I am a parent. There's nothing worse than getting parental advice from your friends that don't have children. Like, hey, why don't you do this? You're like, shut up. You don't have kids. I don't want to hear from you. But I do have a child, and he just turned 24. So my only piece of advice is enjoy it as much as you can because you're going to blink and they're going to be gone.
I've heard that from a couple of people, and I'm experiencing that. I'm going, holy cow. Over the weekend, had the opportunity to make up for a missed field goal from our Great Clips guest who pushed it wide right. So they called me out to kind of redeem it. And I had my 9-year-old Gus out there holding the ball for me. And it made me just reflect on my time at Utah, and I'm thinking, holy cow, this was a long time ago. In fact, I went back to my seats. We're season ticket holders now. And the group in front of me turned around and pointed at Gus and said, man, I remember watching you when I was his age.
Yeah.
I'm going, am I really that old?
Yeah.
This is wild.
Do any of the kids have the golden leg, or are they playing other positions?
You know, they all do, and they all have interest in kicking. It's fun. My oldest Max is a goalkeeper, and so is Gus, my 9-year-old, and they both have great legs. So who knows what will happen? Max this year as a peewee was able to kick off, and so I don't know. You know, that's the thing, and that's what I've learned is my kids are all different. Some of them, I think, have the head for it. Some of them might not.
Yeah, and you know, it really is such a mental thing, isn't it? And I do want to get into a bunch of different kind of angles to what's going on with Utah in just a minute. But how connected do you stay to the program? You know, we have a lot of, like, Trevor Riley's a guest all the time. We're going to have Kenneth Scott on in a little bit. And it felt like there was a number of different alums there on the sidelines on Saturday. How connected do you stay to your former teammates or the coaching staff?
Oh, as much as I can, as much as life allows. I mean, I still have a great connection with a lot of the admin up at Utah. I text or message most of my teammates a few times throughout the year. Just texted Marcus Williams, who signed with the Chargers.
Nice.
And, he's obviously very excited for that opportunity. And Isaac Asiata, who's up there, he and I talk a bunch. And then the coaches, I keep in good contact with the coaches. Try and golf with Coach Scally and Coach Shaw when I can. And to be honest, I keep in great touch with the coaches down south as well. I mean, Kalani and Jay Hill have both been mentors and love those men, and so I've kept in touch with them as they've had success.
Yeah, it's wild. Like when Kalani was up here as the defensive coordinator, I did a coach's show with him every week, you know, and A-Rod and I were actually childhood friends. Our parents lived at the University Village together. We played together when we were like 5. So it's almost inescapable. If you're familiar with one program, you're like indissolubly linked to the other, which makes the game very unique, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. And it makes the rivalry now especially very unique. I mentioned this rivalry week on a different radio show, but you know, it's hard when you know each other's tendencies, like Coach Hill and Coach Scally and A-Rod and Coach Witt do and Kalani. I mean, that game comes down to 1 or 2 plays, and it's unfortunately the way it worked out for us wasn't great. But in that same breath, I texted all of my coaches down there and just said, "Hey, congratulations! You know, you guys earned that, and clearly an undefeated season so far. They're doing something right."
Yeah, they just find ways to win. And, you know, I watch every minute of every game, and there are so many things that just go their way that you're kind of like, are they good or are they lucky or are they both? What do you think about, pertaining to BYU?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, look, they're not super flashy, especially on the offensive side of the ball, but they have dudes. You know, they have an offensive line that can move you, and they've got receivers that are really good, and they're sneaky good. They're not top end speed good, but they're consistent, and they also have a really good kicker. And he hasn't had to do much this year. I mean, I know he kicked a couple big ones last week, and that was very close for a minute there until the fourth quarter. But yeah, they've got a veteran kicker, and it just helps when you have that continuity, I think, across all three phases.
100%. So speaking of kickers, we got to talk about it. You know, and it's been an interesting, because, you know, the rivalry game is the week of the game is so fun to get ready for. I had Whit on, and I said, man, this is such a fun week. And he said, wait, what'd you say? Did you say fun? And I said, well, okay, what's the Kyle Whittingham, verb for it? And he said intense. We had A-Rod on. We tried to get coaches from both coaching staffs and former players from both teams. And then the game happens, and it's just wild how it always comes down to your point, a few different odd dynamics that don't necessarily present themselves every single time. And it seems like every year you can bottom line it with one statement, whether it's like Beck to Harleen or Burton block field goal or the Mark Harlan game last year. Like, you can like say one name or you can say one thing and everyone's like, oh yeah, I remember that. And this year, Andy, it's going to be going for it on fourth down. And I've tried to be fair here. It's not like, oh, okay, Kyle blew it or Jason blew it or Larry Simmons didn't. Like, pieces of all of it led to the failure all around. It wasn't one person's fault. But as a former kicker, were you surprised to see your old ball coach continue just to go for it on fourth down when 3 points every single time would have made a big difference?
No, I'm not. Analytics have been a big part of the game, even when I played. And maybe I can give you a unique perspective on his decision-making, Coach Whit's decision-making. I remember specifically probably 3 or 4 times, but I'll use Michigan for an example. Mm-hmm. We're sitting at the 32-yard line, so we're looking at a 50-yard field goal on fourth down. And Coach calls me in, Coach calls Tom in, says, hey, here's what I'm thinking. You know, here's what the analytics say. What are you thinking? And it's like, hey, we've got the wind at our back. Let's kick this thing. And so we go out there, 50-yarder, right down the pipes. Awesome. Another example is when we're in Arizona State and the wind's in our face, and Tom has put it inside the 5 like 3 times already. And so it's like, hey, here, we could kick this. Analytics say yes based on your performance, Andy, because you got to remember that like a lot of these analytics are based on the success or the failures of the players, especially on fourth down when it comes to the kicking game. Yeah. And so we decided as a group there, hey, let's have Tom punt this and put it inside the 5. And when you have a veteran group of specialists, like you can do that. But I don't question for a second Coach Whit's decisions to go on it on fourth down during that game. Like as a field goal kicker, I would have loved to see him kick the field goals. And you'd say, yeah, hey, this is a rivalry game that's going to be decided by 3, 6, 9 points, whatever. You should probably kick those field goals, and that's the other side of this. But in the same breath, like, that's what the analytics say. We have the best offensive line in the country, arguably. Like, of course, let's go for it. And then it just comes down to execution. You know, you put the freshman kicker out there and he misses one of those. You know, then it's a different conversation altogether too. Hey, we should have gone for it. So it's hard to say. I think relying on analytics is huge. And there's also an element of it that I think a lot of fans don't understand, where, of course, Coach Whit and the coaching staff are weighing whether or not they should go for it based on what the analytics say. Like, there's also a gut decision that's been made, and that gut decision in all 4 of those, or all 3 of those, I guess, technically, were, hey, let's go for it.
And it's, you know, our job is so silly because, and I try to approach it through this prism, like, I don't know the team like Kyle does. I don't know football the way Whit does, who's one of the great. So, like, hindsight's always 20/20, and it's easy to second guess, because the other unfair portion of this is if Larry Simmons picks up a block, or if Devin falls forward, they convert a couple of them, and Kyle looks like a genius. I mean, the razor thin margins here are a little bit silly to be critical of when it comes to really what could have been, because we would be applauding him if they convert, especially the first one they convert. I mean, they had run it down BYU's throat. You convert, you get 7, and then on Monday we're like, he's a genius because they set the tone and Utah won the game. But when it does go the other way, it's only fair to ask questions about it. And I wanted to get your take on this. So some good perspective there on the way Witt approaches analytics and brings you guys in and says, this is what the numbers say. What do you guys think? Is there anything to this, though? What the analytics say, and I've used this line a few times, what the analytics say on like a Saturday afternoon against Arizona in Salt Lake, is there a different approach on a Saturday night against BYU and Provo when it comes to maybe understanding what the momentum would look like if you don't convert, how loud this stadium is going to get like if you don't convert? Like, is there a different approach based off of opponent and moment as opposed to just, okay, let's just go with the numbers? Does that make sense?
No, it does. I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. That book is like 6 inches thick. You know, it's a big book, and I don't know if it takes into account the statistics from playing at home versus away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it tries to it's objective analytics or if there is some subjective weight put to those numbers. So I'm not sure on the answer, but you would think at that point you go, hey, we're at BYU, like this stadium is bumping, it is loud. You know, it's a hard game to play because again, you get that 4th down, you go and score.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? That stadium's not so loud
Yep,
anymore.
exactly.
So
exactly.
I don't think so. I have to think the numbers are objective.
Okay. One of the interesting anecdotes, and I wasn't at the game, I was watching on TV. You're not going to get me down in Provo for much, respectfully, so I'll just watch it on TV on my couch and enjoy it. But Porter was there, and some other buddies were there, and Witt talked about this where during one of the timeouts, Dylan went out to practice a kick and just shanked it. And apparently, like, it wasn't even close. So what sort of dynamic do you think that brought into play? Because Witt admitted himself, like, we saw him miss the kick, and then we had to make a decision. And, you know, you played the position. If you miss it, are you more likely to adjust to be able to make it the second time? I've never played the position. So, but give me your thought on that dynamic of the decision-making process.
Sure. That happened to me one time in my career down in Arizona State. You remember it well. And
yes, I do, Andy. I wondered if we were going to get there.
A breaking, elephant. No, you and I have moved way past that. So Arizona State, I get a timeout called. I go and kick it. And the thing is, like, when you hear that whistle, you're kind of like, oh, I'm just going to half-ass, this rep here and push it right.
Yeah.
And so I push it right. And then during the next live rep, I pull it left.
Yeah.
Trying to overcorrect. And it was after that kick, Tom said, I'm never going to let you kick a ball again if I hear timeout. So the second we heard a whistle, Tom would pull the ball up, would not even let me take the rep, wouldn't even let me practice the rep. And you see that a lot in the NFL, whistles called, and a lot of times the guys just go through it and kick it because they want a free rep.
Mm-hmm.
But for me and Tom, especially for me mentally, it worked out best where I didn't see how that first one went. He would pull it up, we'd go back through our regular routine, and then kick the live rep. And so for me, that's what worked. And for Dylan, I mean, Coach Witt, I believe said, that's been a range kind of 45, left hash or right hash, and that he's trying to improve his consistency on. And so that's a decision that's probably been made throughout the week where you have a field goal period, basically Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And for me, I would script my own kicks. So anytime I felt like I was struggling from a certain hash or a certain distance, I would make sure to script during practice a bunch of kicks from that area.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know if that's the way that it's still done.
Yeah.
I was going to probably stop by practice, today or tomorrow and watch, but I don't know how if Coach has scripted it for Dylan. Like my freshman year, Coach Hill scripted everything for me. But that decision is made, I think, from those two factors: practice during the week. He may have been struggling from that distance and that hash, and also just seeing how that timeout, 4th and 7. He pushes it wide right, and Coach just says, "Hey, we're not going to give the ball up here in case of a missed field goal. Like I'd rather see us go for it."
For our confused listeners, let's just get it out there. When Andy missed his kick against Arizona State, I made a very ill-timed joke. I really thought it was a joke because I loved Andy and obviously respected you. You were so good. And then I put my phone away, and about 30 minutes later, I got a phone call like, "Hey, have you seen what's going on Twitter?" Which I didn't know. And then I logged on, and I was the mob that had your back that came at me was pretty eye-opening. I hope that actually made you feel good, that you had all that support. People were mad at me for a long time for that.
Yeah, it was definitely the Twitter 1% overreaction that came after you, and it's crazy how you see something online and how realistic you think it is, and then you actually get in front and talk. And,
Yeah.
like I walked in the locker room after that game, and I had almost all of the defense. And it's funny, the defensive line is usually the first to let you know that they're pretty pissed off at you if you, if you missed a field goal or whatnot. And had all of them come up to me, hey, like we're in that position, we're in that overtime position because you piped 3 kicks during the game.
Yeah.
This isn't on you, this is on us, this is on our offense, this is on our defense. And the defense played well. I think it was like 16-16 or 13-13, something like that.
Yeah.
So anyways, long story short, like, yeah, it's interesting how misconstrued some things can get online, and that was one of those situations where it was like you got fed to the wolves, and that was a weird moment.
Well, I genuinely felt so bad because I had so much respect for you and you were so good at your craft, and it was just a ill-timed joke that was taken the wrong way. So I've apologized to you off air. Let me apologize to you on air. I still feel bad that I cracked that joke at a really low moment. For a kicker that was so good at what he did, you didn't deserve that. So apologies.
Well, apologies been accepted for 12 years.
Yeah.
But apology accepted in person, and I think that it's a good learning for all of us. We are, like, I had this moment over the last weekend, when a prominent senator was tweeting at Dylan Curtis for kicking off during a prayer, and it's what's frustrating to me is. Someone in that position especially, but it's like, hey, you don't understand the dynamic of the first or the 30 minutes leading up to kickoff, and how limited space kickers have to really go out and kick a full-length kickoff or a long field goal. And this poor kid was just trying to get his reps in, and it wasn't timed, and like you get to a point too in your career where you are a little bit more aware of what's going on around you pregame.
Yeah.
And so, he might not even known what was happening. And anyways, it was an interesting moment, and I just want to take that opportunity to, like, let's have some grace for these kids.
For sure.
This kid's 18 years old. These kids are out there busting their butts, and so what you say on Twitter, you may or may not think is seen, but it can be, and it. Yeah.
No, I'm really glad you brought this up. So for our listeners that may not be fully aware of what happened, because I want you to kind of walk us through, because Dylan was his coach just said, go warm up, and he just went and warmed up. So for our listeners that may not be fully aware, and let me just say this, you do not want my full opinion on Mike Lee, so I'm going to leave that off air. But Dylan Curtis, Utah's kicker, was warming up prior to the BYU game, and while he was warming up, it happened to be during the pregame prayer, and Mike Lee, who apparently had nothing better to do, sent out a tweet and said, would you say it's poor form to do this during the pregame opening prayer at a religious university? Andy, you are a member of the LDS Church, and you were also somebody who was a kicker as well. So I want you to take us through this entire situation. The way I read it, and Dylan himself, poor kid, was attacked online to the point where he apologized. And that actually irritated me, I'm not going to lie. But there was no ill intent here. Wasn't he just warming up when his coaches asked him to? And do you think there's any chance he even heard what was going on while he was trying to get ready for the game? Unpack your thoughts there.
I highly unlikely that he knew what. He even said that there was no ill intent. Like, I was just going out and kicking when my coaches told me to kick. And the irony of that tweet from Senator Lee was that he's saying, is it bad form? It's like, well, is it bad form that someone's taking video of a kid kicking during a prayer? Like, I'm during that prayer. I am at the game, by the way, decked out in red. My son Gus has a blue cougar tail that he's just snarfing down during this prayer, and it's like, okay, was it bad form that my 9-year-old's eating during the prayer? Like, it was such an attack on a kid because he's wearing red and because it's going to get likes and it's going to get action online.
Yeah.
And that's what irritated me. And look, there's members of our church on both sides of the ball here, and both sides of the rivalry. And I think Jake Murphy outlined it best. If you follow him on Twitter, he's a great follow. Tight end here at Utah. Really a staple of my freshman year. He gave me so much confidence running out to kick field goals, and I have a lot of respect and love for Jake. But he outlined it. What they do is you're sitting in the locker room pregame, and the coaches have a whiteboard that has, it's always a countdown. So 60 minutes to kick off. This time to this time, it says receivers. This time to this time, O-line, whatever. And so you look and find when your time is based on the kickoff time on when you are supposed to go out and get yourself ready. So without a doubt, whatever that was, 20 to 15 minutes before kickoff is when Dylan was supposed to go out and work on his kickoffs. And that happened to just align with when BYU performs their pregame prayer. And so, again, it's to me, it's crazy that this kid got attacked for something like that. And it's unfortunate because, he's trying to find his way in his freshman year. One of the most talented kickers I've ever seen. I mean, watching him last game just warm up and kick off, like the kid's got a leg. He's going to set a Utah record for longest field goal, I have no doubt. And he's just trying to find his way and his consistency during his freshman year. And it's shots like that where, like, come on, this kid shouldn't even have to worry about that. Like, let's be grown-ups here and not be hypocrites.
Yeah, and, it's really the only thing, because I love the Utah-BYU rivalry. I love the week of it. I love talking about it afterwards. I think it's such a blessing that we have it. But if there's one angle of it that I don't even love calling it the Holy War. It's not my favorite thing because I think that underscores the one dynamic of it that I don't love, and that's when religion is brought into it. And that's when, you feel like there's some holier-than-thou fans down south that look down on people up here. And people up here might look at them as pious and judgmental. And that's unfair because that's a broad brushstroke statement that does not encapsulate the entire culture or religion. But when this happens, you go, can't we just get through one of these things without some ass doing something that's ridiculously judgmental that underscores the cliches that people believe anyway, fair or unfair? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I think it's the 1% on each side that shows the ugly face. Other than that, like, I had a great experience in Lavelle Edwards, and I'm sitting there decked out in red.
Good.
And of course, I've had many great experiences down there, and close with the Cougarettes, close with Tom Homo and his family. And so there's a lot, and then obviously my coaches are down there. So there's a lot of just a lot of love that I have for people at BYU. And so I had a great experience in that stadium. Like, those fans are great. They show up. It's beautiful. The marketing down there is top notch.
They do a great job.
It's incredible. And I mean, Cosmo is one of the coolest mascots in the nation.
I want to know how they keep finding these athletes that can do what they can do in that get up.
Yeah,
it's wild.
It's wild.
Yeah.
And marrying a Cougarette, to see what he does at the Cougarette timeout, where they go out and perform their hip hop dance, and he's in the middle of it, just breaking it down with these professional dancers. I mean, it's cool. So they do a great job, and I have a lot of love for many people down there. But it's that 1% that make it just they push it over the edge.
Yeah.
And like, I love a heated rivalry. I love like those feelings of animosity that come up during that week and during that game. But having the ability to just let it go and go, hey guys, like, this life's bigger than football.
100%.
Like, let's not bring religion. Let's not bring like this personal attacks to something that's just so good for our state.
Yeah. If you want to participate in the political discourse that's become ill and sick, then just stay in your lane and let us enjoy football, Senator. Like, leave us alone, please. How did you meet your bride?
We grew up in the same neighborhood.
Oh, okay. And she went to BYU, and so you've known her for a long time then.
Known her for a long time.
Cool.
Yeah, we dated about a year before I went out on my mission.
Okay.
And about a year when I came home, and she was dancing at BYU before I even enrolled at Utah.
Oh, interesting. All right, a couple of minutes left. Let me ask you this. I'm not going to ask you if it's what's last year, because I don't want to put you in that position. And I honestly don't necessarily cover that angle on my show very much. But what I do want to ask you is whether it is or it is not. And there are people that are more plugged in than I am that believe that it absolutely is. And I even, when I had him on during the rivalry week, I kind of like gently alluded to like, maybe, hey, does this feel like it's your last rivalry game? And he handled it with dignity in class because that's who he is. And he basically said, I don't want to overstay my welcome. But the question I have for you is, if it's this year or next year or whenever, when the transition takes place and Morgan slides over a seat, feels like he has the alumni support. Yeah, it feels like most people feel like he's the right choice. Is that fair to say?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep, 100%. Love Coach Scally. He's got the energy. He's innovative. He's intense. He's a player's coach. It's I don't know why everyone sees him or Coach Witt's blueprint and kind of just naturally push that over him. And I don't think that's fair because he's a completely different coach. He's obviously been mentored his whole life or his whole coaching career by Coach Witt, and can take all of the good. But it's like Coach Witt and Urban. Like Urban gave Coach Witt pieces of success that he has then applied in his own brand and put his own fingerprint on the program. And Coach Scalley's going to do the same thing. And I have so much love for him. He's grown so much, even since I was coached by him. And I think, without a doubt, he is the right guy for the job.
All right, one more thing. You think we get it done Saturday against Cincinnati? 10.5-point favor, the Utes are now. They're going to be without their leading rusher. It's interesting, Andy. The advanced metrics still rank Utah as nearly a top 10 football team. S&P Plus Football Power Index on ESPN, one is 7, one is 11. AP poll is what it is because you have 2 losses. But most of the advanced metric stuff still think Utah is a top 10 type team. Do you agree with that? And give me your thoughts on Saturday.
Oh, I do completely. I mean, just watching every game, see what they've done. A bad quarter against Tech, injured quarterback, and same thing with BYU. And I don't want to take anything away from the win from BYU, but I think that's a different outcome if Devin's healthy. And Saturday, everyone's so suspicious about game day. About game day coming here. Yeah. And last time we had, game day, Pac-12 after dark, we went and picked off Jared Goff 5 times and beat Cal, So, I'm all for it. I think we get it done Saturday night, 8:15. It's going to be loud. It's going to be wild. And the boys are playing well and taking all that confidence from that Colorado win. I mean, just you watch what our offense can do and how dynamic they are. We finally put it together with special teams, and then the defense is going to be the defense. I mean, they're solid. So I have no doubt in my mind that we're going to take care of business Saturday.
I actually wanted to get one thing from you real quick because you referenced the defensive line is usually the first to get mad at you. That's the wrong positional group to have mad at you. I mean, those are some intimidating dudes. Was there ever a moment where you were kind of like, you felt like that maybe they were a little too angry at you? You were a little uncomfortable?
Well, so in fall camp, Coach Witt would throw everybody on the line. I don't know if he does this anymore, but he'd throw everybody on the sideline, and we would run gassers.
Yeah.
And so we'd get our 10 gassers done, and then he would call me out, and he'd say, Andy, come out here, 35 right hash. And if I missed, we're running another gasser.
Oh, dear.
So I learned very quickly not to miss. And there were in my early days, there were a couple times where I did miss, and I heard it afterwards from that group. And that's because those dudes are out there sacrificing their body.
Sure.
They're sacrificing a lot to get us to that position. And so anyways, I learned quickly, don't miss field goals.
Fair enough, man. Well, you're a legend, and thank you for your time. You be well. We'll chat soon, okay?
Yeah, thanks, Spence. Appreciate it.
All right, Andy Phillips, one of the best to ever do it at the University of Utah, the kicker position. I always appreciate Andy's time. A big day today as Jason Christ was named as the president of soccer ops for both Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals. Jason live in studio with Trey alongside. We have Kenneth Scott later on, and then Sammy Morris stops by. Do want to tell you about a deal we have going on at Game Day Men's Health. So here's the deal. As you get older, it's just harder to stay in shape. So if you've never tried things like testosterone therapy, I would recommend it. I've been utilizing it for about a year. And then they also have semaglutide and tirzepatide, all the weight loss stuff that ultimately you've heard about. If your libido's low, they can help you with that as well. And as a result of them being a client on the show, they have 2 different really good offers for you. Number one, you get a free consultation, which means you go in, you get some blood work done, then they're going to go over your levels. And then they're going to talk to you about whether or not your testosterone is low and how they can help you out with supplementing that. If you're interested in the weight loss stuff, that's on the table. They also have peptides. It's a very easy way to get back in shape. You have to put in the work. There's no such thing as a shortcut. You still have to go exercise, but this will assist you. And then here's the kicker. You get 50% off of your first year membership if you tell them you heard me talking about it on the show. So go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now. That's GameDayMen'sHealth.com. We'll catch a break. Trey and Jason Christ live in studio on ESPN 700. Thanks, dude. On this Wednesday afternoon, rolling along, we'll get back to some college football storylines as College Game Day is actually in town. They're setting up right now. Of course, Saturday, a big day for the Utes. They welcome in Cincinnati. It's a massive game. We'll get back to that coming up in the 4 and the 5 o'clock hour. But a big announcement made today by the Miller Sports and Entertainment Group as Jason Kreis has been named the first ever president of soccer operations over both Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals FC, and honored to welcome Jason live in studio. Jay, congratulations, man. Big day. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much, Spence. Really pleasure to be here.
Always appreciate the time. We're also joined by the VP of Communications for RSL, the legend, Little General, Trey Fitzgerald. Hello, Trey. How are you?
Hi, Spence. Thanks for having us.
No, I appreciate the time. So, Jay, let's start with kind of the background here, right? Origin story, how this all came to be. Of course, you rejoined the club 3 years ago? Is that right?
No, just under 2 years ago.
Under 2 years ago. Okay. Yeah. And then obviously we had another ownership transition. The Millers have taken over. So kind of take us through the process, how this kind of came down and culminated with the announcement today.
Yeah, so just under 2 years ago, I came back in a sort of a hybrid business / sporting role, director of operations and special projects, and really sort of dug into some special projects. I think my first one was just around culture in the club and identity of the club, then moved on to a little bit of the game model in the first team. And I did that for a specific reason because I really felt there needed to be a lot more alignment from the academy through to the Monarchs, through to the first team. And I didn't think that existed just in my first 30 days of watching the academy team play. And so delved into that pretty severely, worked with all the academy coaches, the Monarchs coach and Pablo and Kurt, to sort of establish how do we want to play moving forward, because it's important. It's important to have your academy players have a full understanding of what they're being asked of in their positions and have that run straight through the Monarchs into the first team. That creates a really clear, not only sense of identity, but a clear pathway for players to move up and down. Have felt really good about that process in the last almost 2 years now. And then have just done various things in and around the roster for the first team, and just done exactly that, special projects, and touched a little bit on the business side through being in executive meetings and those sorts of things. When the Millers came on, they had me in for a meeting. Steve Starks, Michelle Smith, and John Kimball actually a little bit ago, where essentially they sat me down and said, we've got this idea and this vision for how we see the organization moving forward. We really think that we like the idea of having an executive of soccer that's over both Royals and Real Salt Lake. And as I was listening to it and listening to their vision, I thought to myself, man, that's a really cool idea. I wonder who that could be. And then the next sentence out of their mouth was, and we'd like it to be you.
Yeah.
And so I was really taken aback and surprised by that, but also amazingly proud and humbled by the opportunity. And so it didn't take long, because I guess I'm an overly thoughtful person sometimes, to start telling them sort of my ideas for how I think the Royals and RSL will give ourselves the best chance to consistently compete for championships as we move forward. And I think they liked some of that, and, off we ran.
Trey, the fun thing about this dynamic with the three of us is we were all together back in 2004 when we kind of launched this idea of a club. And now it's culminated 21 years later with Jason overseeing the entire thing. I have not talked to my father yet. I would imagine he's smiling ear to ear, because I think he always identified Jay as a big-time leader, and here we are. How did this kind of come together from your perspective?
So I feel like the seeds have been sown from when, John Kimball a couple years ago said, hey, we're finally able to bring Jason back. And, as I think Jason just alluded to, there was a little bit of a lack of clarity of what special projects and director of club operations would be. But, Jason's come in for the last 22 months, and he's helped all aspects of both soccer and business. Just, as we've grown, right, and added teams and added facilities, there's some natural physical divides, right? Sandy is business and games. Harriman is team and training every day. We've added academy teams. Jason clearly has spearheaded efforts to identify up-and-coming young Utah talent to kind of fill that developmental funnel pre-Monarchs, pre-academy. He's been a tremendous resource, not just for me, from a historical standpoint and coming on your show every week and kind of representing
a new voice for the club, but the support he gives Pablo and Kurt every day, the support he gives Kelly and Jimmy every day, he's a tremendous resource to the players. So I think everybody just really loves having another leader around who bleeds claret and cobalt, for lack of a better term.
So, Jay, a couple things here about the what I perceive to be stability with the club for maybe the first time. I mean, I don't really know how to articulate it. Part of me wants to say the first time since like 2010, 2011. I think other people would disagree, which is fine. But I had Pablo on prior to the Portland match, and I just said, are you hoping to have 1 year as the coach of this team without an ownership transition or your assistant leaves, or something crazy? Does it feel like with what the Millers have brought, we're headed into potentially a sea of calm waters for a minute? Like, is the stability there in a way that it hasn't been for a while? Is that fair to say?
My answer is a resounding yes, without a doubt. And I would say it this way, Spence. I've been a lot of places and worked with a lot of people and a lot of different ownership groups and board members and this, that, and the other, head coaches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What I would say is the very first time that I sat in a room with Steve Starks and Michelle Smith and the Millers, I was taken back to those early years with your father. They understand sports. They understand it because they've done it for a long time with the Utah Jazz. But add on top of that they live here. They are a part of this community. They are supremely invested in the improvement of this community. And all of those things, I think, matter. I think to have leadership that is extremely stable, to understand it, to buy into a lot of the things that I value, consistency, ethical values, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is extremely exciting. And the final piece is it's really nice to be able to go a weekly and sit with somebody and have a chat or have a meeting. It's not the same doing that on Zoom or on a phone.
Yeah, and Trey, to Jason's point, the Millers are really embedded in this community in so many different ways, and it really started with Larry's boldness and willingness to take risks. And upon his passing, Gail's kind of elegance and soft hand allowed the Jazz to grow under the stewardship of the Ladens and Jerry Sloan, and obviously Kevin O'Connor, and then into the Dennis Lindsey, Quinn Snyder era. One thing you can say about the Millers is their track record, and Steve is included in this, of course. Obviously, Steve Starks, who Jay will report directly to, the CEO of the Larry H. Miller Company. They have a track record of identifying people they believe in and then say, do your job and we'll support you, as opposed to making changes, every other week, which I think it's what we need. I think it's what RSL needs, an ownership that believes in stability and consistency.
Yeah, and I think that's, kind of the gold standard, and sports have evolved a lot over, my lifetime, yours, but having, leadership like the Miller Group and what we've seen from Steve Starks, I'm sure Jason and John Kimball, Kurt, Pablo, everybody would echo this. Like, they've really come in over the last 6 months. They've brought calm, like you mentioned earlier. They do have a clear vision of wanting to win and wanting to give people like Jason and everybody else the resources needed to compete for trophies, to compete for championships on multiple fronts, to continue the developmental ethos of our club. And I'm sure Jason can talk a lot more about this, but it's been, the last several years from going from the Deloy era to a league run team to Blitzer primary, Smith secondary, and then the change we had this April. John Kimball says it every day. We are on firmer footing and, like you said, calmer waters than ever before in our 21-year history. And, Miller Sports Entertainment just put out a survey a couple weeks ago to fans and other, segments of the public seeking feedback for what would you like to see at America First Field in terms of fan experience upgrades, infrastructure. And, the last couple years, 3 years, we've seen a lot of investment in that building, which was largely ignored maybe for the first 15 years. It's got great bones. Unfortunately, a lot of the improvements are very expensive, and you don't see them publicly. And now you're going to see new seats and suites and restaurants and screens and maybe a larger capacity as needed as we continue to evolve. So it's just the vision and the ambition is empowering to all of us who have been around.
What is the role of the Blitzer side of this moving forward, Jay? I mean, they do have several different clubs across the world, and I thought that was kind of a cool synergy when he initially took over. What's the Blitzer role now?
It continues. It continues, and I think it was also visionary, and we should speak to this a little bit, visionary by David Blitzer to recognize that this wasn't an optimal ownership situation because they're in New York. And so he was the one that was searching for somebody in Salt Lake community to take over majority ownership. Now they maintain secondary, just slight of it, minority ownership, and they remain involved. You know, Scott Crace is on our weekly ownership calls and has opinions and is just another voice in the room. But final decision goes through Steve Starks and the Miller family on all roster and personnel decisions.
We'll save because I know fans are going to want to hear about the club and some decisions that need to be made on players. We'll save that for our second segment. But let me follow up. Of course, you report to Steve. What's the reporting structure on the soccer side under you with Kurt and Tony and whoever else that entails?
Yeah, super good question. So essentially, Kurt and Kelly as sporting directors report to me now. And then Tony has been moved. His role is now assistant sporting director. It's been cleared up a little bit for him. And we've done a few changes around the academy to free up a little bit more of his time to focus more with the first team. And so that's the structure as it is. It's pretty simple.
Okay. And on the business side, Trey, John reports to Steve, or John reports to
Michelle Smith,
John
who's the
reports to
president
Michelle.
of Miller Sports and Entertainment.
Okay.
And she reports to Steve. So Starks.
Okay, as far as where will you be located? I'm hearing like certain people have been moved over to the Miller building. Some people are still at not Rio Tinto, the Riot, America First Field. So where are the offices now located?
Mine doesn't change.
Yours doesn't change.
Mine
will
stay down in Harriman, where I think it's exactly where it needs to be. I want to have a daily discussions, daily imprint with coaches and sporting directors and everybody. I think Trace had mentioned something earlier, and I'd like to just repeat it. I really think my job is to help people. It's not to necessarily manage or be people's bosses. I really look at my experiences and everything that I've learned in the last 10 years, or actually 20 years now, involved in the professional sport. I'd look at that and just think about how I want to help others to do it better than I could do it.
So, when I heard that this was going to be the move, I was proud of you. I was happy for you. And in a way, it felt like maybe finally clarity as to why you've walked this path that you've walked that has included several different stops and some roadblocks, right, and some speed bumps. And I wanted to get into that for a minute because I can remember, when we won the Cup in 2009, and then you were the coach and the manager of that great 4 or 5 year run. All of us thought, like, he's going to go on somewhere, kill it there, coach the national team, end up in Germany or England or something, Yeah. And that's not how it worked, Jay. Yeah. That your path took turns.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could illuminate us a little bit on why you feel like you're prepared to do this job based off of the things that you've been through.
There's an alarming number of similarities to when I stopped being a player to then being a head coach. Because I felt that I had so many experiences as a player that would lend themselves to me being a different coach than I had experienced. And I had a real clear vision of what I thought that should look like. Now, being a head coach or being a coach for as long as I was until middle of 2023, I have now established some clear thoughts about how it would look different or how I would want it to look different to be an executive. And to be over an entire club. And so I have a pretty firm vision of how I think I can do things differently and better. And yes, I mean, we should spend some time talking about the 10-year gap from when I left Real Salt Lake and when I came back, because it's very easy and very typical for people to look at those experiences of New York City, Orlando City, Inter Miami, the US U23 team, and just call those failures and then move on. But through retrospect and through time away and through really thinking about those, all those were tremendous learning opportunities for me. Those were opportunities that I stretched and reached and, didn't quite make it to where I wanted to in those situations. But it all now seems very clear that it was for a reason. To have experiences as establishing an academy in Miami, to have the experience of going over to Manchester City for 6 months and seeing what true elite looks like, to have an experience as an assistant coach. I'd never done that before. To have experiences with youth national teams, the full national team. I mean, those were absolute amazing learning experiences for me to not only just be, in those roles, but to also experience what the atmosphere and the surroundings of the players looks like when it's really good to when it's not so good. And those are the experiences and learnings that I'm hoping to bring to this role.
Yeah, I mean, you were around, worked for some of the biggest names in global soccer. What great looks like. And I like the way you phrase that, because it's easy from the outside looking in and say, oh, that didn't work, or to use your term, that's a failure. But if you can play the long game, eventually you realize things don't happen to you. They do happen for you.
Absolutely.
Right? But it's hard to know that in the moment, right? Sometimes you have to give it some time, because I know there were some times where you were looking around going, wait a second, why isn't this going the way I thought it was going to go?
No, 100%. And the first instinct is to blame everybody else and think that it's uncontrollable. But we need to delve in more deeply to all of those situations than that, and just say, what are the learnings that I can take out of this? And those, as I said, those are the learnings that I'm really, really hopeful that I can impart and have already started to impart in both of our clubs, Real Salt Lake and Royals.
Trey, I wonder, from your perspective, having worked with Jay as a player and then having worked with Jay as a coach. Yes, you were with the club when Jason was a player. I know that was a long time ago.
It was a long time
ago.
But
having worked with Jay as a coach and then being an executive throughout Jay's tenure in other places, it was clear early on that Jason had the mentality to lead and was able to make hard decisions when I think he had dinner with Chris Klein one night and traded him the next day, right? And so, you knew, I was like, all right, Jay's a shark. He can do this. That's a hard thing to do. But how have you seen him grow and evolve throughout 2 decades of knowing him, and why do you feel like this is the right time for him to be doing this?
Well, I'm glad Kim talks to Jason again, because that wasn't the case for
I know she was mad.
7 days after that.
Was it Robbie Finley we got in that deal?
Robbie Finley and Nathan Sturgis. It was a 2-for-1.
That's right, yeah.
No, look, Jason, since day one here, especially inspired, I think, by your dad, Dave Checketts' vision, which we were all imbued with as we came here from a million different places to build Real Salt Lake and the entire club out of thin air. Jason's really embodied that kind of pioneering spirit, that vision, that ambition I mentioned earlier. And, you hear players talk about it, you hear coaches talk about it. All anybody wants is clear communication. And I know people get their feathers ruffled sometimes when Jason is as blunt as he is, but 21 years here in Utah and 30 years in this business, I'm extraordinarily grateful for just that very upfront, direct communication and interaction in everything, whether it is talking about Pablo's post-game press conference or Diego Luna's marketing opportunities or whatever the case may be. The Ali Sentner trade earlier this year, and Jason's really, I think, come in over the last 22 months and kind of identified there are things that we can build and create as a club, find efficiencies for RSL, Royals, Monarchs, Academy in certain areas, off the field, obviously. And then there are great differences, and Jason talked about this in this morning's media event about, the NWSL is a very different animal in a lot of ways than MLS, and they're at very different growth stages, but the experiences that Jason has been through with the clubs, the international clubs, the federation, there's nothing he hasn't seen or done. And so having the support of Steve Starks and Michelle Smith and the Miller family and John Kimball and everybody, I think everybody that cares about this club should be phenomenally excited for this off season, which is going to start Monday after the Royals home finale on Sunday night, Sunday afternoon, and we're going to be off and running, and preseason's only 90 days away or less.
It's ridiculous how short the offseason is in this league. All right, before we catch a break, we'll talk roster, we'll talk Pablo, we'll talk future coming up on the other side with our second segment with Jason Kreis and Trey Fitzgerald. One more topic here, though. The Millers are a very sharp, savvy group, and they would not have made this investment if they didn't believe in the future of the sport in America. We have the World Cup coming up in 7.5, 8 months in our region. I don't know how much I buy into the whole, the World Cup's going to be here, so soccer is going to be the most popular sport in America type thing, but I understand the sentiment. When it comes to the Millers' understanding of soccer, what sort of conversations have you? It's a new sport to them, and it's not like Gail's going to be in Turkey scouting a left back, But as far as their like I said, the business side, they would not have invested in RSL if they didn't believe this was a sound business investment. Mm-hmm. But on the soccer side, what sort of conversations have you had with Steve and the group, and kind of where are they at with the sport?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, I think that their willingness to accept and be humble that they don't know that much about the game is one of the reasons why they've pegged me or tagged me to do this job.
Yeah.
Essentially, they're leaning on me for that. They're going to lean on me for when we have sporting directors making recommendations about players. They're going to lean on me to vet that out a little bit and to sort of be their voice for that. They will clearly have a much better knowledge of business things than I do, but from a soccer perspective, I think that's what they're leaning on me to do. But they are also just, I think, very excited to learn. And are coming to the games and are asking questions and doing all the right things. But what I love is the humility. There isn't this idea that, we've owned this team now for 6 months, so we know everything and we're going to make decisions on our own.
It's impossible to know everything. I mean, I joke all the time. I've been covering the league for 2 decades now. I still feel like a little bit of an infant when I get into the nuts and bolts of the whole thing. But Trey, I'll give you the final word here. We'll catch a break. Just kind of the future of soccer in our country. I don't need to reiterate what I just said to Jason. I mean, the Millers are smart, so obviously there's a reason they're investing in it. But, with the World Cup coming and, the future of what this looks like and the Millers in charge of the club, how do you kind of see that settling in?
Yeah, and, we've heard John Kimball say this ad nauseum. 2026 will be another watershed year for the sport in our country. We have 30 years of Major League Soccer because of the FIFA World Cup in 1994 in the U.S. This is a bigger World Cup, including Canada and Mexico amongst the host cities, 48 teams. Hopefully we do have two nations training in the Salt Lake Valley for the weeks up to and including that World Cup, and we'll have one team hopefully out in Harriman. We expect to have hopefully Diego Luna and Brian Ojeda representing the USA and Paraguay in that tournament. These are phenomenal opportunities, not only for us locally, but just to serve as a springboard for MLS 5.0 or whatever is going to come. And it's just a tremendous opportunity, again, for the eyes of the world to be focused on the U.S. version or the North American version of what is literally the biggest sporting event or event, bigger than the Olympics, bigger than the Super Bowl, bigger than the World Series, bigger than everything.
We'll catch a break. We're going to bring in Kenneth Scott in the 4 o'clock hour, Sammy Moore as well. We'll get to the 5 o'clock hour where we'll kind of lean into some of the college football storylines. So Jason Kreis, named as the president of soccer operations for both Real Salt Lake and the Royals. First ever appointment there. It's a new position. Trey Fitzgerald, Senior VP of Comms, live in studio. Coming up next, decisions to be made on the roster, where we at with Pablo, thoughts on the season that was, and we'll look ahead. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, rolling along, 3 o'clock hour of the program on this Wednesday afternoon. Happy Wednesday to you, halfway through that work week, one day closer to the weekend. We'll do some Utes coming up as we're getting ready for College game day. To descend upon our market, Cincinnati's in town. BYU is on a bye. Jazz in action tonight taking on Portland. But a big announcement out in Sandy today. Jason Christ named as the president of soccer operations for both Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals FC. It is a brand new position, the first ever appointment. He'll be overseeing both clubs, reporting directly to Steve Starks. And Trey Fitzgerald, Senior VP of Comms, live in studio today during the 3 o'clock hour. All right, Jay, I think it's safe to say coaching is no longer in your future as a result of this appointment today. Is that fair to say?
Did we put that to bed today?
I think we probably did.
I hope we did.
Well, you've got a guy in charge who I've grown to know and like an awful lot. And, last segment we talked about the Millers' track record and it's a unique track record, certainly in pro basketball, where Jerry Sloan was the coach of the Jazz for literally 20 years. Mm-hmm. And if the Millers remained as the owners of the Jazz, I maintain that Quinn Snyder would still be the head coach. Mm. But he got 9 years, and then he left because of the ownership transition, and we'll leave that there. But let's talk about Pablo. Mm-hmm. 5 straight years in the playoffs, which is not nothing, but it's been a few years since we had a playoff win. So your thoughts on the current head coach of RSL and what the ownership opinion is and whether or not he's going to be the guy for a while?
Yeah, first and foremost, I just would reiterate in some conversations I've already had with Steve and Michelle, how important they feel consistency is. And I'm a huge believer in that as well. I am not somebody that believes that we should chop and change coaches and players and this, that, and the other every single year just because things don't go right. I think we need to take a deeper look at how we can improve if we're not happy with the level that we're at. And so, 5 years in a row of making the playoffs puts Pablo in the absolute elite category of coaches in the MLS. We know that at Real Salt Lake and Utah Royals, our objective is to consistently compete for championships. So let's define compete for championships here for a minute. From my perspective, you have to be in the playoffs to do that. Once you're in the playoffs, I wouldn't call it an absolute crapshoot, but anything can happen, let's be honest. So the fact that this coach has brought this team to the playoffs for 5 years in a row needs to be recognized and appreciated first and foremost. So we start there, but now, okay, are we happy that we haven't been able to sort of push on from that in the past couple of seasons? Last season in particular, I would say that not advancing against Minnesota was a little bit mind-boggling because we didn't lose a game. So I still am going to push for some things that I think need to happen in MLS to change. I don't think we should have penalty kicks in the first round of the tournament. I don't think any team that has home field advantage should be out after 2 games because they lost penalty kicks. That one's there. So that's how I feel strongly about that situation. This year, I would say we are happy that we have made the playoffs. And in some ways, we can look at that from a glass half full perspective and say, with the players that the coaches had this year and with all of the challenges, new ownership, et cetera, that were placed in front of them, do we feel this was a good year? Yes. Do we feel it was a great year? Do we feel it is representative of where we want to go? The answer is no. And so we are now pretty clearly in an evaluation phase. This afternoon when I leave here, I'm going straight down to Harriman. We're going to have a 4-hour meeting with the coaching staff to discuss the year, to understand from their perspective what went right, what went wrong, and how we look to move forward and improve for next year. Then we take the learnings that we get from that. We have a front office meeting with ownership in the latter part of this week, and we continue to discuss about how we all collaboratively think we need to move in a way to improve us, because that is the bottom line here. Yes, we're happy, but we also know we need to improve, and we want to improve.
So just to kind of reduce it, Pablo's the coach next year.
I'm not going to say that for sure, but I am going to say that again, if we look at it from position A, he absolutely deserves to be. From position B, did we perform this year to a level that we wanted to? Perhaps not. But is that Pablo's fault? There's a lot of things that we have to discuss here as we move forward in the next week.
Trey, you've worked with Pablo closely since he took the job. Obviously, we'll let Jay's comments stand where they stand. But what have you seen as far as his ability to traverse some difficult spaces to qualify for the postseason? And I'll go back to what I asked him last week. Are you hoping you have 1 year as a coach without some sort of ownership transfer or some random thing? Like stability for a year, I think, is something he would very much like. But tell me your thoughts on Pablo as the kind of leader of this club.
Yeah, I'm a big Pablo fan, right? He makes my job to help tell the stories in and around this club very exciting, right? He is as genuine and honest and generous with his time, perspective, thoughts as any coach I've ever been around. I understand that making the playoffs isn't the goal, but it is the first step towards really any goal, right? And 30 years in Major League Soccer, there's been 205 coaches. Pablo is one of 6 now to have taken his club to the playoffs his first 5 seasons consecutively at a new club, right? And so I think that's something. But to Jason's earlier point, nobody's satisfied. I mean, Pablo, Portland Wednesday night, that's the hardest part of my job, is grabbing the head coach or the players out of the locker room and taking them to face the Zoom or the media or Apple TV or whoever after your season's over, right? It's crushing. And Pablo's always handled those situations with class. To Jason's point, I know we've been bounced in the first round in 22, 23, 24, and now wild card in 25 by the narrowest of margins, right? PKs in Austin in 22, PKs in 2 of the 3 games against Houston in 23, PKs in both games last year without a loss, and then obviously the Portland situation this year. So I don't think no change or absolute stability is in the offing, because players, the locker room will change. There'll be other staff that could come in and out, but I believe in Pablo. I believe he's the guy, but I'm not the soccer expert. That'll be for Jason and Kurt and everybody else to evaluate this season and figure out where Pablo and everybody else needs support going forward.
So I've spoken to both of you about this on and off air a bunch over the past number of years, and it is the way I was raised in your classic American sports where it's basketball, football, and baseball, what have you. And I understand the dynamic of identifying young players, growing them, and moving them on to other teams. I get it. I just hate it. I can't stand it. I wanted Andres here, right? And I want Diego here. I want Gozo here. I want to see these kids grow, and I want them to play for our club, and I want them to play well for us. Again, understanding that side of the business and understanding when things like that make sense, because clubs do it. It's not like it's just an RSL thing. Is there a different approach now with the Millers in charge where we could potentially see Diego grow here and be the star here for a while, or a Gozo, or some of these young players? Like, what's the approach now with the Millers as the primary owners?
This is a great question, Spence, and you've asked it several times over the past couple of months, and I think probably today I have a clearer answer to this than I ever have before. All decisions that are made for Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals going forward will be placed through one clear lens. Tell us how that's going to help us win. Okay? And so the answer isn't clear to say that we would never sell a player.
Sure.
Because we would. If we believed that selling this player, the money that we will get back from that or the resources we will get back for that will help us win, then we would do it. But if the answer is no, if this isn't going to help us win, if this is clearly just a financial, business, transactional decision, that won't go through that lens, and the answer will be no. And so I think that's a pretty clear, it's clear in my mind anyway, as that new direction.
That's great news. It's good to hear. So let's get into, I get a lot of pushback from RSL fans when I bring up 2009, because we're in a different world now. And according to, the MLS website itself, $336 million on player acquisitions during the league's transfer 2 windows combined 2025 shattered the MLS record. According to the graph I have up, RSL this year was 26th in spend, payroll distribution. This is Capology.com. I'm not sure. I know there are other websites and other sources of information that might have different numbers, but if it's not 26, it's probably in that area. Is that fair to say? And do you think we'll see more investment in player acquisition coming up this offseason?
To the best of my knowledge, Spence, I've seen very similar data like that in and around meetings with ownership, and I believe that is true. I believe that our spending in the league in MLS has been towards the bottom quartile of the league. Now we look at that two ways. I look at it the first way, and it again goes back to Pablo and his work. The coaching staff and the group here has done a really nice job to squeeze out talent and to bring them together and put them in a place where they're making playoffs year over year. Now, going forward, I also believe and have been and feel very firm in this that we will begin to spend more money on our players. But again, how and why, okay? We can't start to spend a lot more money on our players until we get the foundation of how we're bringing those players in to a better place. We have, in the last year, since Kurt moved from technical director to sporting director, Kurt, as the technical director, was essentially the head of recruitment here, head of scouting and recruitment. And when he took that position to move to sporting director, we never backfilled the job. So we literally had Kurt as a sporting director and like 2 scouts out there looking for players. Well, that's not a good enough foundation. You can't have the requisite amount of knowledge and opinions around bringing players in if that's your department. So first and foremost, we are right now about to finalize a new head of recruitment that will come in. And then this head of recruitment, who has done this job for a long time, will then tell us, here's what we need to do to have a proper scouting department so that we can properly vet these players out and spend our money the right way.
Do you know who this person is? Have you identified who it's going to be?
No, we're in the final stages of our candidacy. We have a couple that are really, really interesting, in my opinion.
Very cool. And to your point, you can't just write checks. And I hate to bring up Atlanta because Garth is our guy, and we love you, Garth. They were third in spend and finished second to last in the East. Like, you can't just throw money around. You have to spend it on the right players.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of people that just think sports is so simple. You spend the most money, you win. No. You need to spend a good amount of money the right way, and you need to have processes in place to help you make the best decisions that you can. And you're never going to get them all right.
Yeah.
But again, we as a club at RSL and Royals, we first and foremost need to look at ourselves and say, where do we need to improve? And this is an area we need to improve.
Yeah, and I think, again, to go back to the nice thing about the Millers experience, we see so many new owners, like Matt Ishbia took over the Suns and acquired Bradley Beal, spent way too much money on a roster that didn't even make the postseason. He was paying luxury tax for a horrible basketball team, wasted like $250 million. So it's not just about spend, but it is kind of about having resources. So let's move over here. Last year, I have your stats up where your leading scorer, of course, was Chicho. Then it was Andres. Then it was Anderson Julio. Diego had 8 goals. Then it's Matt Crooks, right? So 4 of your top 5 goal scorers from a year ago were either traded, sold, or let go. Did you do enough to replace them this year?
No. And again, that's what I just said. We have to look at ourselves first and admit mistakes. Like this is my history, right?
Yeah.
This is what I just said. 10 years I was gone, and 10 years we had lots of quote-unquote failures. I have to look at myself first and say, okay, what went wrong in order for me to improve and learn? Otherwise, it just doesn't happen. So we've got to look at ourselves first and say, what about the process just didn't work? Why did we keep making these mistakes? Why were we unable to find this goal-scoring player for us in the winter? And how do we rectify that moving forward?
So I'm quite sure you're not going to announce on this show the decisions you've made on the roster, so I won't ask you specifically who's coming back and who's going to be let go. But, of course, there are some decisions to be made on Diogo. There's some decisions to be made. I believe Vera is up. There's some contractual decisions to be made, certainly on a lot of these pieces. As you go through the process, have you identified, just generally speaking, who you would like back and who you think is probably not going to return next season?
That's a really good question, and I can be completely honest with you and tell you that's why I'm leaving here and very shortly to have a 4-hour meeting this afternoon to go through all of this with Kurt, Tony, coaching staff, etc.
Do you feel like we've identified a bit of a core when it comes to the evolution of Gozo this year, and of course who Diego is, and I think Olatunji's got a little something, and obviously Rafa Cabral settled in and solidified a spot that the past couple of years, we just didn't have enough consistency. So do you feel like you have the general idea of what the spine might look like?
Yeah, I believe that we do. I think that we were extremely fortunate. And look, we should also point to that, because that is somebody we brought in the winter transfer window.
Yeah.
So fantastic job there. How do we repeat that more? He's been absolutely instrumental in so many good things this year. I think without him, we wouldn't have made the playoffs. It's very clear in my mind. Terrific leader. We need more of those. And so I think that also has to become a really strong element of what we're doing in the recruitment going forward, because we need more leaders. We need more vocal leaders. I think we have some leaders that are lead by example, but we need a few more that are willing and able to communicate and organize and get after people when they need to. So that will be a major focus for us going forward. But there are some players, of course. This is not a bad team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is not 2007 when I took over like a full blow-up job. This is how do we tweak things and how do we build around some of these good, important players we have.
Let me follow up about Diego because, his star really shot up this year. And you and I discussed it all year long. 9 goals, 7 assists. That's just an MLS play in 27 games. He led you in both categories. And then Pochettino likes him, feels like he's a lock for that roster. What sort of future do you see for him? Whether hopefully it's here. Like I said, it's been so fun to watch him grow, and hopefully it's with us. What sort of player, person, leader do you think he can be when it's like fully formed and baked?
Yeah, I think that honestly the potential for Diego is limitless. I think that Diego has shown sparks and runs of good form and games here and there where you see that. You see his mentality when he's really getting after it defensively. He's capable of doing everything that we want from a player in his position. Unfortunately, I do think it's been a little bit mixed as well. It hasn't been, the consistent performance that you would expect from a senior player. Well, guess what? He's not a senior player. He's still very young.
Yeah.
And this year, I'll tell you, when I think about what he has gone through this year with his national team experience and just being shot out of a cannon into stardom, into U.S. national team and U.S. soccer stardom, man, that's a lot, really a lot. And so I know there's a lot of stuff that he has to deal with and get through and just start to be more mature about those situations. So there's a lot of growth still in Diego Luna, and I think it will be exciting to have him here for a good time to come.
So, as Trey referenced, the preseason is in like weeks.
No.
We're back at this in weeks. Every time the season ends, I'm like, man, give these guys some time, please.
Yeah.
But MLS calendar is a marathon in a way that very few sports are. So when you look at just the numbers and the data, you guys scored 38 goals last year, which is second worst in the West. Austin scored 37. So the natural additions would seem to be in the attack, so you could find a way to score more goals. So what sort of time frame are we looking at? When do you want this group okay, this is who we're rolling with next year?
There's zero doubt. The answer is we want them here day one of preseason.
Uh-huh.
We want.
Yeah.
But that's through my history of the league now, that's almost impossible. So we will just keep moving forward so that we can have these guys as quickly as possible. It will be our objective to have them here at the beginning, and we will push for that. But to be honest, I would hope that it'd be more like a couple weeks through preseason, especially with the immigration process right now. It's so difficult.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we haven't talked much about the Royals. Trey referenced the Alley trade this year. I think that caught a lot of people off guard. And then information came out that she didn't want to be here. And so if she doesn't want to be here, then you got to do what you got to do. I'm not overly familiar with the Royals as much as I am with RSL. They still have one game against Washington coming up on Sunday, so they're going to close out their season. This is also a portion of what you are now stewarding.
Yes.
What can you share with our Royals fans, listeners out there about what you hope this looks like?
Yeah, when you ask the question about having a young player and developing in them and selling them, from the outside looking in, that's what a lot of people could say about Allie Sentnor. She was a young player, tremendously high prospect, first draft pick, first pick in the draft several years ago, amazing high potential, in with the U.S. national team, all these great things. But when you're building a team and you're having to rebuild a team from a position of essentially failure, last place team in the league in the middle of this season, sometimes you got to make difficult decisions. I mean, you referenced the Chris Klein, you referenced the Jeff Cunningham. Go back in the early days of RSL, we had to make some sacrifices and trade away players that, frankly, we loved and were very capable MLS players because, for one reason, either they didn't fit culturally or because we thought we could build something more. We needed a higher number of high-level players. And so for Ali Sentinor, it's twofold. It's, number one, the players saying she really wants to leave and being adamant about that. So ultimately, we want people that want to be here. And if she doesn't want to be here, then we need to consider it. Now, consider it doesn't mean she gets to make the decision. We're going to do things that are ultimately best for our club. And what do I mean when I say that? Put it through the lens. Is this going to help us win in the future? And at that moment, we believed that by letting her go and getting back a tremendous value, that we could essentially replace Ali with two players and the team could improve. Well, guess what? We let go Ali and the team improved. So, and I still think that there's money that we recouped from that trade that we still haven't used and will use it to build our team to be a better team in the future.
So last time the Royals were here, before they took off and came back, they were second in NWSL in attendance. I think Portland was 1 and we were 2. They averaged about 10,000 fans a game, if I remember correctly. Now, we had a lot of World Cup stars on that team. Mm-hmm. So how do we get that attention back? It feels like it hasn't returned the way people were expecting.
For me, there's two ways, and this goes to this little sort of team building process, but also I think about how to attract fans. I had a long argument with this. This must have been 15 years ago with an MLS league exec, because he came here to RSL and said, RSL wouldn't attract fans in a big market. And I'm sorry, but a team that plays attractive soccer and wins and is aggressive about what they're doing attracts fans.
Yep.
And maybe I'm just the dumb one in the room.
No, you're right.
Absolutely. I really believe that the onus is not about getting star players. The onus on us is about getting a team out there that is competitive, that is aggressive, that wins games, and that is a reflection of our community. And this is something I'm really big in believing in right now, is that both RSL and Utah Royals, we should consider it part of our jobs to put a product out there that feels like a reflection of our community. We want our fans to come to the game, watch our teams play, and say, man, that feels like me playing out there. That's a reflection of me. What they're doing out there is what I believe in as well.
Let me ask you about Jimmy, the head coach of the Royals, Jimmy Conrates. It feels like he's kind of steadied the ship a little bit since he took over last year. I've never really met him or spoken to him, but I kind of asked you about Pablo, so let's move over to Jimmy. I mean, what do you feel about the job he's done?
Jimmy is a very young coach, so I think Pablo is still a young coach in the coaching aspect, but Jimmy is a very young coach. Jimmy, I think, is about 27, 28 years old, and is going about a lot of this for the first time, managing a much larger staff than he's used to. In Belgium, I think he was a head coach for a few years, but a very, very small staff. So a lot of the challenges that have been there for Jimmy have been in and around understanding what management of large groups looks like, how to convey his messages. He's an extremely intelligent tactical coach, I'll tell you that. But he is learning and improving as well. So we're looking now at the first halves of the seasons in the Royals have been disastrous. We shouldn't shy away from it. Disastrous. 1 win for the Royals in the first half of the season. And why is that? Well, the why that I think that we're finding is that they have been under-resourced and understaffed from an experience perspective on the performance and medical side. And so essentially we've got a young coach who's running a preseason and just sort of doing what he feels is right. Well, you can't really do that anymore in our game. And I think that in truth, I think the players were extremely overworked through preseason. They ended up injuring almost their entire roster. Almost all their best players were injured for the first half of the season. And then in the summer, we've come together and we've corrected some of that. So I believe that just by correcting what we're doing in the preseason for next year, we could put ourselves in a very much better place.
Last thing, we'll set you loose so you can go make some decisions on players for the next 4 hours. Man, I feel bad for Pablo. 4-hour meeting with Jason about players.
Oh, come on.
I'm teasing. Last thing, last question. All right. In 10 years, we look back on this day. What does success look and sound like?
Well, I mean, I think you've kind of asked me an emotional question, because for me, success is so much deeper than wins and losses. For me, would I be able to walk away 10 years from now, and hopefully I'm retiring, and be able to say that I helped a lot of people, that I had some sort of meaningful impact on a lot of people, players, coaches, staff members, leaders, sporting directors, everybody. I would like to feel like I would like to feel like I could have some impact and mean something in their lives. Apart from that, when we go into the winning, I think it's continuing to do what we're doing, but just taking one more step forward, really. And that one more step forward is winning when it's ultimately the most important. We've won on a consistent enough level to give us an opportunity to compete for championships, but we've got to take that next step to move on and to feel like we're not just in the playoffs, we're in there to win something.
Look, man, I think this is a great day. I think it's a culmination of an incredible journey you've been on, and this feels right. So proud of you. Happy for you, okay?
Thank you.
Jason Kreis, President of Soccer Operations for both Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals. Trey, always good to see you, buddy.
Thanks, Spence.
We'll catch a break. We're going to bring in Kenneth Scott, talk some Utes coming up on the other side of a Wednesday drive on ESPN 700. College game day is in town. They're setting up on campus as we speak. It feels like a little early, but the buzz certainly around the community is very palpable. Cincinnati rolls into town for an 8:15 kick against the Utah Utes. Our next guest played wide receiver here at a very high level for a number of years. Always fun to catch up with Kenneth Scott. Kenneth, happy Wednesday, buddy. How we doing?
Man, happy Wednesday. It seems like the weeks are going by super fast, but I'm super excited to yet another Saturday. So hopefully we come out with another W.
I'm glad you brought that up because from a media standpoint, from a fan standpoint, from a consumption standpoint, Kenneth, all we do all off season is complain that there's no football. And then suddenly the season starts, and I feel like we blink and it's almost over. Does it feel the same way from a player's perspective? Are you always surprised at how fast it seems to go?
Yeah, it is crazy. It's like when you get started, well, it takes forever to get here, and then when it gets here, it's like, wow, where in the world did it go? And so, yeah, it does take forever. And then there is some times where there are lulls where you feel like, oh man, it feels like a long season. Towards like the middle back half, it's like, dang, it's been a long season. And then once the season's over, you're like, dang, now it's actually really fast. So yeah, it does come around like that.
So look, you played wide receiver. You were a very, very good wide receiver. And I wanted to get your take on what you've seen from this wide receiver room so far. You know, we talked to you prior to the start of the season about, who was going to kind of manifest themselves as wide receiver one. It's clearly been Ryan Davis, really by a long shot, who has 48 catches, 518 yards. Devin, of course, likes him. Devin, of course, knows him. They played together last year at New Mexico. So what do you make of that connection? And do you think we're getting enough support from the other playmakers on the outside this year?
Oh, yeah, you can definitely tell they got chemistry. This dude, Devin Pierre, can literally close his eyes and throw it to Ryan Davis, and he knows where exactly he's going to be. They got that type of chemistry, and you can just tell. But as far as the other receivers, I was really excited to see Larry Simmons, Simmons last game, actually make some catches, get a touchdown, showing great body control. And I was like, man, I love seeing it. And so, and even Buchanan, he's this little tweener, right? Tight end, wide receiver-esque. And so I'm loving the way he's doing his thing. And so, of course we want more production, but I'm liking what I'm seeing over the last couple of weeks, especially from Simmons, making the most when the ball is coming his way. So hopefully, we can continue to throw things his way.
Hate to bring it up, Kenneth, but I do want to ask you, what was your career record against BYU when you were at the U? What was your record?
Oh, basically, I don't know what a loss is. That's basically what my record is. I don't know what a loss is. Only alphabet letter I know is a W.
So was it 4? Was it 4-0? Were you 4-0 against BYU?
Yes. Yep. 4-0.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's got to feel good. Unfortunately, the current situation finds Utah on the wrong side of things, as BYU has beat Utah the past 3 times they played, as you're well aware. I wonder what you made of that game. The fourth down decisions that didn't go Utah's way. You got to give BYU credit for finding a way to win. They find themselves undefeated. But what did you make of BYU's win over Utah?
Yeah, they definitely took advantage of, some capitalizing off our mistakes, man. I think the first big one was when we did the spy sweep to Bray coming around, and we had a receiver. It looked like he was indecisive on which defender to block, whether he was defending a read person and then he lately reacted to the person that ended up making a tackle. So I feel like if he would have sold that up, we probably would have scored or got in the goal line situation to probably score that drive. So I just think we missed out on a couple things that eventually in the long scheme of things became bigger than what it is. But, hats off to BYU. I mean, they capitalized on that, on a lot of stuff. Obviously that punt was that was a drainer going into halftime. I thought that was a huge sudden change right there. That was huge. That could have been a difference maker. But hats off to BYU, man. They were able to execute when they had the opportunity, and they did just that.
Did A-Rod coach you when you were at the U? Was A-Rod here as a coach?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely A-Rod was here, and he's the reason why I came to Utah.
Oh, really? Interesting. Elaborate on that. Tell us about that recruitment process and your relationship with Aaron Roderick, who, of course, is calling plays for BYU now.
Yeah, man, I love Coach Roderick, man. When I was it was around my freshman year in high school, actually. He was actually recruiting a senior that happened to wear a number 2. His name was Maurice Shaw. And I remember Coach Rod coming to me and was like, hey, I'm going to come back for you. And so the following year, like my sophomore year, I ended up getting ranked ESPN 150. And Coach Rod was like, I told you I was coming back for you. And so the following year, I ended up committing. And me and him has had a close-knit relationship. And, I always tell the story about how grateful I am for Coach Rod, because my first year when I got injured in my freshman season, I was down and depressed, man. I actually wanted to transfer. And, since everybody was in fall camp and I was the only one in the dorm at that time, Coach Rod opened up his house to me and allowed me to stay with him. And after every practice, Coach Rod would come back home to feed me. He would then, after every meeting, come back and feed me. And he was just making sure I was okay. And, he always did that. And I remember in the recruitment, he said he'll always take care of me. And he never wavered on that. And so I'm forever grateful for Coach Rod for whatever for everything that he's done for me. And, I always show tremendous love.
That's really cool. I didn't know that story, and good to get your perspective. I wonder, with so many coaches down there that were up here, including Rod and Kalani, of course, and then Jay Hill, you want Utah to win. I understand that, but do you find any space in your heart to be happy for them as they've been really cooking? They're 19-2 in their last 21, Kenneth, and of course they're undefeated this year. They're playing at a high level. Do you find any space in your heart to actually give them some love and some credit?
Oh yeah, for sure, man. They're doing their job. They're doing a great job, man. Especially when Utah's not playing, I watch them play. I mean, come on, man. How can you not love Coach Sataki and what he brings, not only to the game of football, but as a person? And you got Coach Jay Hill, man. I love Coach Jay Hill when he was coaching at Utah too. So it's kind of hard to go against him. And then Raylan Singleton, he's coaching over there too as an assistant wide receiver. So it's like you got so many synergies from Utah to BYU over there. So it's kind of hard to go against them because deep down, you got immense love for him. But of course, I want to beat them. But it's good to see that they're doing great. And, I got a lot of BYU friends, too. Even though I wanted to talk trash, I wanted us to get the win so I could talk trash. But, it's all love at the end of the day.
We've been talking quite a bit about it's been interesting because it's not like this program hasn't had talented wide receivers recently. I mean, Devon Vele and Tim Patrick are both in the NFL. But if you were a wide receiver right now, Kenneth, why would you want to come to the University of Utah? It is a position of need, and lost a transfer right before the season who probably would have been wide receiver 1. And we've already kind of gone down the list of the wide receivers that are playing this year. But is there something about the style of play where this is a school that runs the football for the most part? Is there something about maybe inconsistency with quarterback? I feel like the program needs to get a couple of big-time playmakers on the outside this offseason. What's the pitch? Why would a wide receiver want to come play at the University of Utah?
First and foremost, when it comes to us as a receiver position, one thing I had to learn about it is that, it's not a me thing. You have to really figure out what's best for the team. And at this time, if you think about it, our best asset on the team is our O-line. You know what I'm saying? And so, during my time, our best asset right at the time was our running backs, like John White. We had, John White. But my freshman year, we had Matt Ashley out of Eddie White. So it's like, come on, man, these are some big-time beasts. Then you had John White and you had Devontae Booker. So it's like the best thing in football is to establish the run. And if you got that dominant of a run game, then, of course, you're going to lean more heavy on the run game and be less risk-averse and more clock management, controlling the game. And so I look at it now. Of course, I want us to throw the ball. I want us to throw the ball 30, 40 times. I mean, at least that's what I wanted to when I was playing. I want 10 catches a game because I'm seeing other, schools doing it. But as far as, if you look at our team and our biggest asset is our O-line. And so if we get behind those guys and really run the ball and control the game, I think, that's where it comes. But as far as a receiver coming in here, it's a great opportunity to come in and emerge yourself. Like Ryan Davis came in. He came in, became that guy, the go-to guy. And that's kind of like what you need in this offense, just to keep the management of the game going, because we have a great defense. If we can control the clock, do the things that we do, I think it bodes well for us. But as far as that goes, as a receiver, you just got to think outside of just me. It's like, okay, how can I be more of an overall receiver rather than just focus on my statistic production? I take, for example, if you think about the Eagles, right? There's no doubt in your mind that A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are freaking fantastic receivers. But if you look at them statistic-wise, you can be like, on paper, you're like, they're not that great. But they're freaking amazing, right? And I think that's the same thing with, like, receivers over the past years. We had some amazing receivers. However, it's just systematically does it fit in what we do. And so I think that's a key thing. I mean, you look at BYU, they have some great players. They've had great players over the years, and their system is a lot different than ours, and so they're able to shine more than we are in regards to the passing game. So it just depends. And I think our greatest asset has always been, physical up front, run the football, beat people physically. And then when we do pass to convert so that we can keep that ball moving and control the game. And then our defense is going to wire them down, and we're going to win the game. And that's like the winning recipe. So long story short, that's what I think they're concluded to be.
No, good insight. And that's kind of the way that Coach Witt believes football should be played, right? I mean, that's kind of like the Kyle Whittingham way, yeah?
Yeah. If you think, and it's crazy to say, because I always mentioned, like, we were always like a Big Ten team. Like, I looked at us like a Wisconsin or like an Iowa type team, or a Minnesota, those type of teams that, they're going to run the football. They're going to be physical. They're going to have a stout defense, right? I never looked at us as one of those Big 12 passing type teams. And, I just never thought of us like that. Maybe early on in the years, like Sugar Bowl years and stuff like that, when we were in the Mountain West, when we were really throwing the ball. But, like, over time, I just always felt like we were more of the, all right, let's just start our dominance type school. Even I can say we're even fit like a SEC if you think about it, because we're physically up there and our defense is great. So I just think that's the type of mode we are.
Wanted to ask you about Devin, and we don't know who's going to start under center on Saturday, and I will ask you about Bird in Colorado in a moment, but I don't believe there's a quarterback controversy. I think if Devin's healthy, the job is still his. He's second in the Big 12 in total QBR. Now he's ninth in passing. But when you look at QBR, which combines, of course, rushing, it combines taking care of the football. It also takes into account how many times you've been sacked. So a portion of this certainly does belong to the offensive line. But Brendan Sorsby from Cincinnati, who's going to be in town on Saturday, actually leads the conference. But Devin is second so far. Now, the issue, Kenneth, is in the two games that the competition has been the best. There have been some reports that he wasn't fully healthy against Tech, and he definitely re-injured his ankle against BYU, which is why he sat against Colorado. And you can't just take those two games off the table, unfortunately. But outside of those two, he has been pretty dominant. What are your impressions of this young man under center for Utah, Devin Dampier?
Yeah, he's definitely tough. He has that Cam Rising edge and toughness to him. It is tough playing hurt, and so he's just fighting through it. I like him. I think he rallies the guys together. I think he's a leader, like Coach Witt always says, and I do feel like he's the QB1, like you mentioned, too. Great team player, and I feel like he has control of the offense, especially being with Beck, for a long period of time and bringing that over. So, I think he's doing a great job. I just hope that, kind of like what you mentioned, against Texas Tech and BYU, he wasn't his full self, so we weren't able to do the things that we wanted to do, and I feel like we could have won. And so it's going to be interesting, and that you mentioned that on Saturday, like knowing that he may be 75%, maybe 70, maybe 80. And so with that being said, how productive will we be? But I'm confident that the coaches is obviously going to monitor that. And if they do feel like, I think our Coach Witt said it, like whoever's give us the best chance to win, like if it's a 70% Dampier versus 100% Bird, like then they'll be like, okay, who's going to give us the best chance? And they're going to put whoever's in who's going to give us the best chance. And so hopefully he's more than 80 so that we can have a game like what they did versus Arizona State and all the other schools that we just blown out.
Yeah, the good news, Kenneth, is if Devin can't go, Bird has shown that he's up to the task, because where Cincinnati is at their most vulnerable is their defensive line is the last-ranked defensive line in the Big 12, according to Pro Football Focus. And you already referenced our O-line, and I call them bar bouncers because they like pick dudes up and just throw them, right? So I would anticipate Saturday night the offensive mindset, a lot like it was against Colorado. I think they're going to run the ball a ton. I anticipate them being able to do that. So if it is Bird, if Devin can't go, based off of what you saw against Colorado, will you maintain the same level of confidence in Utah's offense?
Yeah, I think so. I think Bird brings an electric feeling to it. Not saying that Dampier doesn't, but I agree with Coach Wood. Like, they both have this it, and I think Bird has this super high ceiling about him that it's like it's exciting to watch him, and I love seeing him. And you could tell he just loves being out there. And so the guys love rallying him out. He has that certain type of energy, it's that young energy. And I feel his confidence growing more and more when he was throwing the ball as well. And so I'm excited for him. I think we are going to, like you mentioned, their defense is, last when it comes to that. So we're going to run the ball down their throat. I can see us maybe passing around 20, 25 times, but majority of the passing probably going to be a lot of dink and dunk, and you're going to see like a little back shoulder type action if we are throwing it downfield. But I think it's going to be a more controlled game. Let's go ahead and wear them down on offense, and then make our stops on defense, and then control that clock and just keep their offense off the field, because they got a good quarterback that can do a lot of things. So we keep them on the sideline, control the clock, game management, take care of the football. I think we'll be good to go.
So the Colorado win was the second opportunity for this team to show that they have the ability to bounce back after a disappointment. And so far, 2 for 2, which is a really good sign. I wanted to know from you, though, Kenneth, as a player, what is it like to prepare for BYU Utah when Kyle Whittingham is your head coach?
I love it, man. I love it. Like, every TV in the facility is going to have an old school BYU game on. Like, and of course the Max Hall comments, like it's going to, like, going in there, man. It's like no other. It's just actually, I love it, man. It's a good feeling. I've always wondered what's like on BYU side. I wonder what they do. I just thought about that. But on our side, man, you have the BYU stuff all over TV, and just to, like, so people, because a lot of our players, they may not have understood the background of the rivalry. So having those games and understanding what the rivalry is about is super key, so that you can kind of understand what you're getting into. And so when you're around the facility, because it's going to be known. And so they do a great job of letting us know, like, the history behind it, the importance of it, and, why you would want to win that game for bragging rights from the state.
Also, from a player's perspective, College game day is in town, and so it is the preeminent college football pregame product. Millions of people will be tuned in. And the last few opportunities, Kenneth, as you know, that the Utes have had with game day in town or big noon in town just haven't gone very well. Is there anything there from a player's perspective that is potentially distracting, or is it just a coincidence because when game day's in town, it means you're playing another team that's really good?
Yeah, it is like that when it comes to that. But they don't distract us, I should say, at all. They don't come into our facilities like making it to where, like, it takes away from the game. Unfortunately, we haven't been in a good stance. But then again, if you think about it, it kind of goes back to what we were alluding to, like the Texas Tech game. Our guy was, kind of injured, so he wasn't operating at his full capacity. So it kind of put a little downer in it. And then you think about the BYU game, kind of in the same realm. He, on the back half, he's kind of injured too. So it sucks. It does put a bad taste in your mouth. But, in my experience, like when we played against Michigan at our home, and that was a really big game. When we played against Cal and Jared Goff, that was a freaking phenomenal game. So I feel like we always were prepared. It just sucks when certain things happen within the game, like someone's getting injured and they may temper the game off a little bit. But I think they're going to be ready, man. They're not going to go over this year when it comes to big games. They're going to pull it through and win this.
Last thing, and I'll set you loose on this. And I continue to find this really interesting because when you look at ESPN's advanced metrics, if we just do away with the coaches poll and the AP poll, I mean, the fact of the matter is you suffer 2 losses, you're going to fall in the rankings. But, Kenneth, when you look at the advanced metrics, the S&P Plus has Utah as the number 7 team in the country, and the FPI has Utah as the number 11 team in the country, indicating these guys still think Utah is basically a top 10 team. Do you agree with that? Does it feel right? I mean, the losses are the losses, but how good do you think this Ute team is?
Man, I get, the losses are the losses, like you said, but I feel like we're up there. I think we're in the same caliber, to be honest with you, around BYU. I think we're just as good as them. I think we just, like, even for the Texas Tech game, right, we were all the way there into the back half. Like, I think we're in that range, right? I'm not gonna say top 10 or anything. I think we're in that range, right? And I think those two losses does put a little smear, but I do feel super confident that we'll finish out the year and we're going to end our season 10-2, worst 9-3, right? Which is an awesome year. And so I do feel like we're better than, just as good as what they're saying. And it just sucks that those two games went away from us. But I do feel like we're good. And don't let the passing game come on. It's going to be taken to another level. So, but I do feel confident in our team, though.
Where can people go follow you on social, Kenneth?
Oh, yeah. People can follow me at kscott_2 on Twitter or Instagram, either one, whatever their preference is. And, I love conversating with people and talking and shop about the football game. So feel free to follow me on there and we can chop it up.
Great to catch up with you as always, my friend. Be well. We'll chat soon, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
All right, Kenneth Scott, top 10 all-time wide receiver as far as receptions go. Unfortunately, had a couple of injuries. He was a talented wideout, man. There's no doubt about that. All right, we'll talk more Utes coming up. Sammy Mora will join us. We'll kind of get into the weeds about this matchup with Cincinnati. But before we catch a break, we welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros. If you are a sports fan and you don't have Dish, I can just say it's the wrong move because I tried all the other platforms. You can also save a grip of money on internet by dialing 801-424-DISH. What's up, Ryan?
Great opportunity right now. And guys, this promotion we have with Dish is ending just in a few days. And this is your last opportunity really to call us up, take advantage of this offer. It's a 2-year promotion. Price is going to be guaranteed. It's going to be much cheaper than what you're paying, especially for cable or DirecTV. You're going to be saving truly hundreds and even thousands of dollars over the next couple of years. Plus, on top of that, you get the next 3 months free on Dish's top package. This is a huge offer, just having that on there. We're going to throw that in, plus also 4 months free of Showtime, Paramount Plus, and the NFL Red Zone. Call us up, take advantage of this offer, get installed for free. We'll get you the best price guaranteed. We'll also throw in dinner at JCW's and ask about our internet solutions because we have a ton of internet providers right now. And we have a solution for you guaranteed, at least one, sometimes 2 or 3 different options. So if you're overpaying on your internet, your bill just keeps going up. Even if it's fiber, there is other options. You could probably even pay a different provider, or use the same fiber and pay less money. It's that easy, but you got to call and find out what we can do for you, how much we can save you. Stop overpaying. You want extra money in your bank account? We can help you with that, and we can get you free programming and dinner on us if you call now. 801-424-DISH. That's 424-DISH.
Ryan from the Dish Pros. Football season's here, and it's, once football hits, you can really feel the season shift. We should update this copy because football season's been here for a while. What you need to know, with football season comes tailgating, and Outlaw Distillery is our official liquor provider of our VIP ESPN 700 tailgate at each home game. If you guys are up on the tailgate this Saturday, come on by and say what's up. I was there last week for a while. It's really fun. We're right on the corner of Garsman's, right by the Smith setup. But Outlaw Distillery provides honey bourbon, vodka, spiced rum, and their coffee rum as well. Try the new near hazmat barrel-proof bourbon. In addition, you can try some of their spirits, either at our VIP tailgate this season, go to Big Willie's Sports Bar, or check them out at the Utah State liquor stores. A grain-to-glass product forged in the American West. Check out our friends at Outlaw Distillery and outlawdistillery.com. Sammy Mora from Ute Zone joins us coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. It looks like College Game Day has begun setting up over on President's Circle. The pregame show will begin Saturday at 7 a.m. Only University of Utah students showing a valid UID card will be admitted into the overnight queuing area on campus, which begins Friday, coming up at 6 p.m. So keep that in mind. It'll be an exciting week, and we'll talk more about it now with one of our favorites, our friend Sammy Mora from Ute Zone on a Wednesday. Hello, Sammy. How are you?
I'm doing great. Spence, how are you?
I'm well. I appreciate the time. College Game Day moved the needle for you at all? You excited for this Saturday?
I have some really fun memories of watching College Game Day, you know, with my dad growing up and stuff. So it's always cool to watch it, and it's especially cool when it's here in Salt Lake. I mean, it adds an extra wrinkle to my week, you know, additional media sessions and stuff to go to, so it's a lot of extra planning on my end. But I'm always for, you know, getting as much exposure. I think a lot of Utah fans would rather see as much exposure on this program as possible. But yeah, I'm nostalgic when game day comes into town.
Any thoughts as to why, when the stage has been as big as it will be on Saturday, the Utes have not been able to win these games? I mean, it's probably just as simple as the other team is pretty good too. But, you know, when game day is here, it means you're playing a good opponent. But as of late, the results haven't been great, whether it's game day or big noon kickoff. What are your thoughts there?
I honestly, I think there's been a little bit too much weight, I want to say, to a certain extent, put on the whole, like, Utah can't show up when these big games happen because, you know, despite what the record shows when game day's been here, you know, Utah has won in a bunch of big-time games, you know, going down the stretch. Last year, the year before this year, they've struggled, but historically speaking, Utah's been pretty good when those big games are here, and I think, you know, it's just I'm personally one of those people. I'm not putting too much weight into, you know, the win-loss record of when game day or big noon or whatever's in town. But, you know, to each their own is what I'll say in that front.
Are you one of these people that are upset that Coach Witt does not seem to take the availability report very seriously? That story this morning, you know, it just made me kind of shake my head because, you know, to a certain extent, like, yeah, the way Witt handled it versus Texas Tech could be seen as questionable. But my other thought process is the way that it was always explained to me is it wasn't a practice report. It wasn't an injury report. It was if the game was played that day, would these players be available? And, you know, with Texas Tech, there was never a shred of a doubt that Devin wasn't going to play. You know, and the last week thing, like where Devin was on the report, but then he was off the report for game, you know, obviously, like we were all told that, you know, he was going to be the emergency quarterback if needed. If things started heading south, you know, Devin would go in, but there was no need for him to be put out there. So it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like it's being blown extremely out of proportion because, you know, the way that it was explained to everybody else was, this is not an injury report. If they wanted an injury report, they should have made it an injury report and made it NFL style where you have to list what it was that is hampering the person, if they practice that day, and what their game status is for Saturday or Friday or Thursday or whatever day of the week you're playing. But shooting straight, Kyle's playing it as it is. Will they be available on Saturday? That's all it is. You think the conference does anything? I mean, Kyle's not going to change the approach unless Brett Yormark has an issue with it and the conference does anything. I mean, Brett McMurphy can write what he wants. It's not going to change anything. The only thing that would is if the conference has something to say. Do you anticipate anything like that happening?
Not really. I don't think, like, you know, and like, obviously Kyle said that he had a conversation with the Big 12 after the whole Devin situation happened and stuff, and you know, I think that they're on the same page. And I think if Utah was playing it wrong, I think that, you know, the Big 12 would say something. I know a lot of people were pissed off last week that all of Utah's season-ending injuries weren't on there, but, you know, Josh Furlong and other people in the media here on the beat said that, you know, if you designate a player as a season-ending injury and you notify the conference, they only have to be on the report for 1 week, and then you don't have to put them on the report anymore. So I think that's something like, you know, this is the first year the Big 12 has done this. Like, there were going to be bumps. There were going to be things that didn't work. I wouldn't be shocked to see things like change in the off season, but as of right now, you know, there's 5-6 more games left in the season. I don't think they're going to make any like sweeping changes right now. If there are changes, it's going to happen in the off season. But if they wanted it to be an injury report, they should have labeled it as an injury report, not an availability report, because, you know, at the end of the day, I don't think it really, it doesn't really change anything for, most of these teams, especially for Utah.
Let's talk about the question that really is on everybody's mind, Sammy, and that, of course, is who the celebrity guest picker will be on game day.
I actually asked people on Twitter about this on Sunday, and I got a lot of, answers of varying effects. I mean, my dream would be Post Malone. Just, his ties to the state. I feel like everyone here loves him. I was at his concert when he performed at Rice Eccles earlier this year, and he referred to, Salt Lake as home and stuff. And I think that would be a good one. But, you can't go wrong with like a Steve Smith and Alex Smith, something like that. But it's going to be, I'm interested to see who it is, because it's either I feel like guest pickers are on when they decide who it is, or it's someone that you're like, how is this person even connected to this school?
Just to put the rumors to rest, it's not me, Porter, right? We haven't received any requests. I mean, you're my people. Have they reached out? Because if they do, I don't want the spotlight. I will say no.
I do have some emails from game day. I haven't forwarded or responded to. Sorry.
Well, Sammy, just for your information, it will not be me, because I know that was your follow-up.
Hey, it won't be me either. I had people in my mentions saying that it should be me, but it also will not be me.
I like it. All right. So ultimately, we have not spoken since the BYU game. So I know it's yesterday's news, but since I value your input and respect what you have to say about this program, what did you make of it? I mean, a lot of conversation, obviously, on the decisions to go for the fourth downs, and then the play calling, and then the execution. There are several elements to that led to the coming up short portion. It's not on one person. This is a team game, and I'm not taking any credit away from BYU. That's a team that's undefeated now. But what did you make of this year's iteration of the Holy War?
I think, if you go back and look at the stats, like Utah outgained BYU on offense. Like they were leading in most statistical categories, except for like time of possession and obviously points, which was points is by far the biggest one. But I think that, Utah, like the thing is if Utah wouldn't have turned the ball over as much as they did, I think that, those missed field goals might not have hurt as much. But I know that those missed opportunities for kicking the field goals also were important. Like I wrote kind of I don't want to say scathing, but it was like a kind of what's lower than scathing, whatever is a little bit lower than that. But
generally critical?
Yeah, critical. That's the word. It's been a long week, Spence.
All good.
But I wrote a critical article about Kyle, and the 6 points that could have swayed the win, and that's what it really felt like. It really felt like there was 6 points that were left on the field for Utah. And I know Kyle says, well, if you get those 6 points, it kind of changes, you maybe not score a touchdown and stuff like that. I get that. I get where he's coming from. But to a certain extent, it felt like those points could have, really changed things. And I think it's at that point now where it's that's old news to me, and it's you take what you take from that game, which is the biggest thing was Devin's health, and you take that maybe there's not as much trust in the field goal kicking situation than we had going into the season and stuff, but there was also things I liked, the emergence of Daniel Bray, how well he played. Utah's secondary and defense held up pretty well for a good chunk of the game and stuff, but it's one of those things where it's I'm focused on Cincinnati. I feel like the football team. I'm focusing on the Bearcats and what they're going to bring to the field on Saturday.
Love that we've turned the page, Sammy. You are a football person on to Cincinnati. But before we get there, of course, I will ask you about the response against Colorado last week. And I was on the sidelines, and I don't think Colorado is very good. They're better than West Virginia. A lot of people drew that parallel. They did beat Iowa State. They were coming in off a bye. But that was a mismatch of gargantuan proportions. It was basically over, quite frankly, even before halftime. But what did that response say to you, and what, if anything, did you learn about the Utes against the Buffs?
I think that I knew from watching Colorado's film and stuff like that and talking to people who were inside their program that if Colorado couldn't stop the run, it was going to be a long night. Their rush defense had been susceptible all season long. And, that's what Utah did. Utah, ran for 422 yards. They did what they needed to do on the ground. It was a dominant showing on both sides of the field. Morgan Scalley blitzed 70% of the time. I don't think I agree with Kyle. I don't think I've ever seen a game where Utah blitzed as much as they had like that one. But, I think you learn a little bit more about Bird Ficklin and what he's capable of. Obviously, his completion percentage wasn't great, and I know that fans want to see a little bit more from him, and I think he wants to see a little bit more from himself. But that's something that, you kind of have. I think I have a little bit more confidence about what's going on in the backup position with Bird now that we've seen him in live action. And yes, I will qualify that with, we do know that Colorado is not the greatest opponent, but still I think there's stuff you can glean from it. I think that, he didn't turn the ball over. He was safe with it. He was effective in the run game. He's a physical guy. He seems to grasp this offense quite well right now. And so there's a lot to like about Bird. And I think that, future-wise, I think they're good with him. And so defensively, it was complete and utter dominance. Caden Salter probably still is feeling the pressure right now. He's probably still hearing John Henry Daly's footsteps in the back of his head just because of how fast he got back there. And Jordan Seaton, who is an All-American, was lined up against JHD, and he looked like he was in not having the greatest time of his life, because JHD would get off the line and Seaton was already putting JHD in a chokehold. It was that bad. It was like he could not get the upper hand. But I think it was a good response. I think that this Utah team, if you look at both of their games after losses, they have laid the hammer down on, well, not the band hammer, but they've laid the hammer down on the the team. So it was West Virginia and it was Colorado. Those two teams really got the best of Utah, because those teams got the ever-loving schnout beat out of them when Utah played them after a loss. And I think that that's what this team is good at. They're good at rebounding. And I know you would rather not have those losses, but it gives me a little bit of comfort knowing that this team will not let someone beat them twice. Utah very well could have lost to Colorado. Utah very well could have lost to West Virginia. You're traveling 2 time zones and stuff. But both games after a loss, you couldn't even see the after effects of the previous week. They just came in, handled business, and kept it going.
Yeah, especially after a loss to your rival. I mean, oftentimes, even if you beat your rival, the toll that week takes on you. I mean, BYU lost 2 straight last year after beating Utah here in Salt Lake. And in the spirit of a bounce-back performance, I do think we need to, as the kids would say, give Teo Johnson his flowers. Against BYU, it was rough. It just was. And I'm sure he had a rough few days, but he was, I don't know if that was his best game of the season, but, that kid really deserves a lot of credit for the way he bounced back.
Yeah, I mean, we use a lot of Pro Football Focus grades over on Ute Zone, and looking at that, the Colorado game was one of Teo's best games of the entire season, grades-wise. And I think that, I asked Morgan Scally about it yesterday. I said, what has been going on with him? He struggled at times. What's going on? And he basically said, Teo's a kid who puts a lot of pressure on himself. And there's been a lot of times this season where he has been, thinking too much about the pressure and thinking about trying to make the perfect play and doing this and doing that and not focusing on doing what he knows how to do. And I think that was really clear. You saw him playing free on Saturday. That interception, I don't think he comes up with 3 weeks ago if he's in a different position. But it's good to see him getting to that point. And Morgan said I think he saw him in the last 4 games start to turn the page. I know fans are probably arguing with that because of the whole BYU thing, but I was impressed with how Teo played last week.
All right, before I set you loose, you referenced you're on to Cincinnati, and we don't know who's going to be under center. And part of me doesn't think it matters just because of this, Sammy. As you know, that's potentially the worst defensive line in the Big 12, according to some of the grades that have been going around. And we know that Utah can run it down your throat if your D-line's not ready. It feels like that's kind of where this thing hinges. Give me your thoughts on Saturday before I set you loose.
Yeah, I think that defensive line is a big thing that, you kind of look at. Cincinnati has, only allowed 7 touchdowns on the season, which is towards the bottom of the Big 12 in total, but they're 141 yards per game, 3.9 yards per carry. But, that's not Arizona State was around those categories before they played them, and Utah did what they did to Arizona State. And I think that, Utah's done a really good job. Specifically, I'll give Jason Beck his flowers on this one. He's done a really good job at scheming games to let the opposing defense beat you. Let me back up. We're gonna restart that phrase. Utah does a really great job at taking what the defense gives and using that to their advantage. So with Colorado, it was they couldn't stop like anything. So they were going to run the ball down there. So West Virginia had a susceptible pass defense. So Utah was able to throw the ball pretty well against them. So I think, from looking at the stats, their run defense is not great. Their pass defense is also not great. They're 13th in the Big 12 in pass defense. They've only had one interception on the season, around 7 yards per reception, 11 touchdowns, 227 yards per game. So it could easily go either way. It could go, Utah's going to run the ball heavily on this defense. It could also be that Utah's going to throw the ball. And I think, if it is a throw game and it is Bird that's under center, I'm interested to see how that goes because he wasn't as accurate as we've seen and heard last week. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he, prepares. And I wouldn't be shocked if Cincinnati is, preparing for both Devin and Bird because we honestly, we'll get a somewhat of an idea tonight when the first availability report comes out. But again, at this point, we don't know what like Devin was where he was on the availability report last week, and he was off it by the time the game rolled around. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it goes. Sammy, where can people go find your work? You can find me at utezone.com. We have a VIP podcast. We have VIP content. Utah actually just got a football commitment today, so we have a bunch of analysis and breakdowns on that. You can find me on Twitter at S_Mora247, and you can follow the Utezone account at utezone.com. Sammy, thank you. Enjoy the game, okay? Thanks, Spence. Talk to you later. All right, Sammy Mora, Ute Zone, a fountain of information for Ute fans out there. I always appreciate her time. All right, we'll get to the 5 o'clock hour. We got another hour of Ute football. We'll get you ready for the game on Saturday, but we bring in Ryan from the Dish Pros, where you can save money on internet solutions. And if you're a sports fan, which you probably are because you're listening to the show, you got to get over to Dish. It's the only thing that gives you all the access to the local sports. What's going on, Ryan?
Great opportunity right now. Guys, you're running out of time. Today's the day you want to call in. Listen, this 2-year offer where you get 2 years of credits and the price is guaranteed. Plus, you get Dish's top package, over 440 channels, free for the next 3 months. It's going away. They're taking this promotion away from us at the end of this week, and this is the opportunity. Call us up today. Take advantage of that. Get the 3 months free, and also we'll throw in Showtime, Paramount Plus, and the NFL Red Zone with the multi-sports pack free for 4 months. Get installed. Get the best price with us. We'll throw it.
All right. Well, just give them a call if you have questions, 801-424-DISH. All right, before we catch a break, little story time real quick. A couple of years ago, I am now in my, I'm going to say mid-40s. I'm still in that area. We'll just call it that. A couple of years ago, I decided that I really wanted to get back in shape and potentially get in the best shape of my life ever since I've been a grown-up. When you're young, you're playing high school sports, easier to stay in shape, what have you. So I started hitting the gym. I cleaned up some habits, started eating really clean. And after about 3 months, I'll just say I was disappointed with what I perceived to be lack of progress based off the energy I was putting into it. So I had a friend bring up as to whether or not I had tried testosterone therapy, which up until then I had not. So I hit up my friends at Game Day Men's Health, and they helped me get on a little testosterone therapy and some peptides. And 3 months after I started that, the progress was like 70% better, and it helped me get in where I'm at now, which is the best shape of my life. Now, if you're relating to that, if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you're aging a little bit, you feel like your energy's low, you want to add some muscle and lose some fat, this is the best way to do it. And I like having them as a client because I can actually give a personal testimonial. So they've got a great offer as a result of them being a client on the show. Also, if your libido's low, I'll just say this helps, and I'll leave that there. Number one, you get a free consultation. And what that means is you go in, you get a blood test, then they go over your levels with you, and they show you what they can do with their products to help you improve your testosterone level. They have semaglutide and tirzepatide, the weight loss stuff that everybody has, but they have it at a discounted rate for my listeners only. So free consultation. But here's the kicker, 50% off your first-year membership. Some of this stuff, once upon a time, was only for elite athletes or very rich people. That's not the deal now. It's very affordable as a result of the deal they are offering you as a listener on my show. So go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com. It's GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Make sure to tell them you heard me talking about it. Then they'll give you the free consultation and 50% off your first-year membership at GameDayMen'sHealth.com. 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. Final hour of the show is next on ESPN 700. All right, final segment of the show on this Wednesday afternoon. Congratulations, halfway through that work week and one day closer to the weekend. Jazz in action tonight. They're taking on the Blazers, whose head coach just posted bail after being arrested on federal gambling charges, one Chauncey Billups. Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier will not get paid during their leave from their posts as a player and a coach. Are you familiar? It was interesting having Andy Phillips in studio. Are you familiar with what happened with Andy and I 12 years ago?
No.
Okay. That's good because a lot of time has passed.
What did you tweet?
A corny joke. So when Andy, first of all, as I said to him, like he was awesome. And
automatic.
He was so good. And so, every time Utah was on a broadcast that wasn't a local broadcast, the only thing they would talk about concerning Andy is that he was also a skier. And so I got so tired of that narrative. I tweeted out like, Andy Phillips is a skier is the new Matt Harpring played football, because for Jazz fans, like every time the Jazz were on TV when Harpring was a player, it's all they talked about. He's a football guy.
Georgia Tech,
Georgia Tech, football guy. So I tweeted that out, and Andy missed his kick, and I said something like, maybe he should just ski. Just like
nice, Spence.
Actually, in my mind, I'm like, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Right? I really and the other thing that Andy referenced, I never thought he would see it. I was just like, yeah, maybe you should ski. And truly, I put my phone down, and within 20 minutes, I got like 10 phone calls like, dude, go look at your Twitter. And after the game, Andy saw it, and he retweeted it out. And so Ute fans from bro, I've told you that I've been loose with every single fan base in the state. That's the only time. Like, Ute fans were irate.
Had their guy.
Dude, I got feedback all weekend. Like, and so Andy was a good sport about it. We talked about it then. But this is the first time I think I've seen him in person since that went down. Because I sent him a text. I'm like, dude, just so you know, it was a ill-timed joke, and it was based off the narrative that people only know you as a skier. No excuse, deleted the tweet, apologized to him, because not only was he a great kicker, he's the best dude.
Yeah.
He doesn't deserve any of that. So,
nor does he care, now that we know him.
No, it was all good. It was all good. But it's fun to have him in studio. All right, we got to get out of here. Porter, what comes our way on a Thursday show?
On a Thursday edition of the show, we will, of course, talk Utah and Cincinnati, college game day in town. How about Tony Pike, the former Cincy and NFL quarterback? He is now on the color commentary for the Bearcats. We'll have our friend Mark Harlan stopping by, Utah's athletic director.
Okay.
And one Richard Smitty Smith stopping by. So we'll talk some hoops, too.
There we go. We got the AD on tomorrow. And, of course, it's always good to have Smitty in. We'll say goodnight. Special thank you to the aforementioned Andy Phillips, to Jason Christ and Trey Fitzgerald, Kenneth Scott, and Sammy Morris. Some good stuff today on a Wednesday. If you missed any of it, ESPN 700sports.com is where you go. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. Then for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, check out the podcast page. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It is available wherever you get your shows. You can subscribe, rate, review, and if you would do that, it would help out. Say nice things in the comments. Give us all the stars. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Wednesday evening. We'll talk to you on a Thursday edition of The Drive. And as always, you can catch that right here on ESPN 700.